All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. I'm Andrew, aka Roland Mindgasms. And we got Parker here, aka Afro Psychonaut, and Dusty, aka Hunk Muffa Centrist. from Odetta in the book, right?
Yep, Datawalker's his catchphrase there.
Yeah, exactly. Hunky Muffa. I'm the only honky muffa in this conversation. So yeah, we're talking about Stephen King's book, Dark Tower 2, second book in the Dark Tower series called The Drawing of the Three. It's about a dying and crippled gunslinger, Roland, at the end of the first book. This starts off kind of where that one left off, I guess. And he sees some lobstrosities, which are these weird, like, lobster bird psychedelic monster things. And he's dying, so he finds a magic doorway, and he goes and possesses the mind of a junkie drug dealer and uses his magic portal door powers to help him smuggle his drugs and get him out of a kidnapping / drug smuggling situation. And eventually he does the same sort of magic door thing with the mind of a black woman in a wheelchair whose legs don't work and is also a schizophrenic, and then eventually also possesses the body from a third magic door of this kind of like hitman / thug enforcer guy. And basically it's the junkie named Eddie and Odetta, the crippled schizophrenic, and Roland are together for some reason, this odd band of people who are basically working to help Roland in his quest against the Dark Man and to find the Dark Tower. So yeah, this is a weird book, but also an awesome book because it's Stephen King. So I know you had read it before, Parker, and Dusty and I hadn't read it before. So to start off with, Dusty, why don't you say your thoughts in general about the book?
The book is weird as fuck.
Yeah.
But it's definitely interesting. I like the takes that he's gone here. It's like this weird, I would call it almost a cross between epic and urban fantasy, where you have fantasy elements that cross between like the real world and confront real world issues. Like it's like he's taking these people who have had really bad lives and he's trying to turn them into heroes of a cause that's selfish to his own, because his thing is he wants to go to the Dark Tower and he needs these people to do it. And these people, their lives are terrible, but he kind of fucks them out for a higher cause, even though they think he's kind of full of shit themselves.
Yeah.
But they almost have, nothing to live for, so they just kind of go along for the ride for the most part. But man, what do you guys think? Like the stereotypes for Detta, man. Detta was just annoying as fuck to me. Like I don't even know what to say about Detta. Like I was like, man, this is like the worst. Like I understand that it's supposed to be like the worst black stereotype that you could think of, but man, is it so annoying.
Yeah.
Especially if you're like the audiobook. And I was listening to the audiobook, and the guy that read it sounded exactly like Dan Carlin. So imagine Dan Carlin trying to impersonate like the most ghetto black woman in the world. It's like it's hilarious and sad at the same time.
Oh wow!
I think I sent you like a clip of that, like a little clip of that audiobook. I was like, damn, man, this is like, what the hell is going on with this? I was like, man, this split personality stuff is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, once they get into that Detta arc, I'm like, man, this woman's demonic.
Yeah.
Like, she's just trying to troll. She's like the ultimate troll. Like, she's troll incarnate. She wants to see them fail, but she does it like the most trolly way possible. Like, so trolly that she harms herself in the process of trolling them.
Yeah.
You know, by
Yeah, for sure.
deliberately making their lives difficult by sacrificing herself. Because I know they're like pushing her through the desert. Well, not desert, but the beach, and she purposefully like makes them stumble and fall, and most of the time she gets knocked over and lands on her face, and
Hmm.
she's just kind of laughing about it. But then again, you know, that might not be pleasant either. But I know this is all about Detta, but to be honest, I thought Detta was the most interesting character. There's just
Yeah.
so much craziness like surrounding her. And man, are we gonna get the crazy one, or are we gonna get the one that's right? And
Hmm.
then you had Eddie, who is like in love with the you know, the split personality. Because we
Yeah.
know
The
she's
one
split. She's
the, the
like,
one who is like an intelligent and articulate black woman.
yeah, super hot, super pretty,
Yeah.
intelligent, caring, you know, basically every positive aspect you could think of. And in the split, you have this other personality, which is basically all of the worst aspects you could think of.
Hmm.
Um, and then there's like this combination, the synthesis that happens towards the end. But man, that was like a crazy character. I was like, damn. And then there's like the third character, right? Who's not exactly, well, he's not a hero at all.
No.
But Roland uses him to his advantage in order to progress on his quest.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the Odetta was really interesting for sure. I was surprised too because I kind of expected later on in the book there to be kind of some sort of big reveal involved with the Detta personality, um, having be some sort of, I don't know, like evil person or witch or something that knew Roland before, because we saw in her thoughts a few times that she already knew who Roland was for some reason. So I was expecting something to happen with that. So maybe Parker knows about this because he's read the whole series, but I wonder if something else is going to happen with that, especially since we know at the end of the second book that the three of them are going forward together in this mission still.
Yeah, it's interesting actually to hear somebody that had a fresh set of eyes without knowing how this book played a part in the whole. What your interpretation of the Odetta and Datawalker split was, and there was, I found Odetta to be kind of an interesting character in the fact that uh, Datawalker was kind of made as a split to save her original personality of Odetta and make it so that she had a kind of like a vengeance towards the white man version of herself. And I found it even more interesting the fact that that was a white man's interpretation of what black rage was.
Yeah,
So having that was an interesting interpretation in general because it was nearly cartoonish, but then it was like when I look at the experience of like, and I try to empathize with the experience of being a white guy that's trying to portray black rage, I tend to think, yeah, that would look kind of cartoonish because it has to look over the top. It's so devoid of anything that you usually see. But we, even now, like, I mean, you can look up a YouTube video and you'll see, you know, the angry black woman and see something that's somebody that's as truculent as the character of Detta Walker was. That being said, uh, I believe at the end of this book, and I'm not really 100% sure because I kind of got on this tear when I got into this book and just started just reading into the other one. So it's all kind of blending together into Wasteland. But I believe that at the end of this, that schism is made whole and then she becomes was it Odetta or was it just Datawalker? Which I forget what she decided to just land on, but she decides to land on just one identity, and it kind of takes the protective values of Datawalker, because the biggest thing about Datawalker was she was truculent, she was difficult to deal with, but she was fucking tough. So when it came time to actually learn to become a gunslinger, that's what actually took the character and the entirety of Odetta to become a gunslinger in the first place. And Roland essentially allowed that to happen. That was a big part of the training too, was to take these broken people, and they were broken mainly, as you find out as the series goes on, because they were always meant to be gunslingers. It's kind of like it makes you question destiny. It's like, why do things not work for certain people, even though they do really try very hard? Because Eddie Dean, for instance, he is, by all accounts, he's seen as being a screw up. And when he's found, he's even a heroin addict. But everything that makes him a screw up is ultimately what makes him one of the best heroes, because he has this unconventional view of the world, which was also interesting because it was seeing like heroin addiction and kind of knowing the extent of a white person that's going through trauma. It was more humanized and seemed more relatable than Datawalker, because I can kind of understand what Dusty was talking about when he said that she seemed like she was an over the top character.
Yeah, I mean, like she's definitely seemed over the top to me, even though I'm white. I thought, like, I wonder how much, to what extent he was doing that on purpose, because it's like her crazy personality.
Yeah. I mean, but the thing about it is if you look at it from the outside looking in, I could definitely see how you could take that interpretation and say that was somewhat believable to a certain extent, as far as what you've seen in popular culture in general. So I don't, and especially with as old as this book is, I don't know when the second one came out, but I think it was like in the 90s. And when you look at the 90s, I mean, things were a lot better. I mean, you had the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and it was anything post the Cosby Show was just a lot better anyway. But it is what it is. But I think in general there was more of a trying to understand the experience, and trying to kind of I guess express it with more consciousness, the Black experience, Black rage, and all of these other concepts that nobody overtly said, but they're now, I mean, they actually have names now. I mean, we all know about all the buzzwords that are really pushed by leftist kind of politics. With whatever you think about that, it's just they're more common within the lexicon of just regular folks now. But I digress. When we go back to the story about just how everybody comes together, I don't look at the story as being. I look at the story as being the first step in the ultimate bonding and a depth of bonding between the four characters, the quartet, as you get to know them, of Jake, Eddie, Odetta, and Roland. Once that's solidified within this book, it's kind of it just deepens, and they just have this kind of level of love. And I like the fact that Andrew, you actually brought up the fact that they kind of have this bond in a certain way, due to the fact that they go through so many difficulties. And it seems like this truculence, and like the fact that they've gone through all of this and they still have this love. And you spoke to the fact they had this kind of internal feeling within one another, that they were all supposed to meet, and then that kind of feeds into the love that they have for one another. And it does end up being love, even though there are sacrifices that have to be made later on in the book series. But seeing it all kind of develop within the first book, and seeing how it all evolves later on, and even going back and seeing how unpolished everybody is, because everybody in the book becomes, I mean, you look at them, and it's interesting hearing Dusty's interpretation, because he's like, they're all losers. And I was like, yo, man, you like keep on reading this book, every last one of them has a time where you're like, damn, they're tough. And I mean, like, to an unreasonable amount of toughness where you're like, yo, like, I would want to be that level of tough if the time came. And all of them have that. And I just don't, knowing how the stories end, I don't even view them as being losers, even at the time when they're at their lowest, when they're first met. So that's just very interesting to hear the interpretation.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because you can already see in this book the start of Eddie and Odetta joining Roland's quest to find the Dark Tower and kill the Dark Man, basically making them into more of heroes because they're inspired by his examples. And one of the things that I was just reminded of too is Dusty and I were talking when we first started talking about the book about how funny it was, the kind of culture shock with Roland when he was into our world and Eddie and Odetta's world. Like, could I get a pork noi? Just a pork noi, like, you know, a sandwich. And all these little cultural differences. That part was really interesting too.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts was when Roland was talking to Eddie, and he's just casually talking about how he is a honk muffuck, and I just like busted up laughing because it's I guess it's because it's the audiobook reading, so I don't know how that would play in your own head, but it's always funny when white people take, you know, colloquial black terms and say them straight. So I was just busting up laughing when I heard that.
It's funny when you read it in a book too. Definitely.
Yeah.
Probably even funnier in the
no.
audiobook version though.
Well, the thing about it is when you're actually black, like, that didn't even hit me because I only read the book. I've never listened to an audiobook. So like when it was like smooth, I was like, what are you talking about? Everything was, and then you're like, oh, the audiobook. And I was like, yeah, that would probably be different if it wasn't my own voice. And like, I didn't like just know how that naturally sounds. And
especially
then even
if you know it's a white guy impersonating a black guy's voice.
Yeah. And
well, that's why the audiobook is nuts, because it's read by a white dude. So imagine that guy voicing Odetta. Like, I'm kind of amazed on how good of a job he did. And that's kind of the crazy part. So like, damn, this guy must have been practicing hardcore, because man, does it sound like he knows what he's talking about. Like, it's a character voice, like straight up. But then when he does Roland reinterpreting what Odetta says, it's like, all right, I'm gonna give this guy props because he's at least like saying all this stuff in character. But it's just so hilarious because in the books, you know, I guess Roland is definitely portrayed as a pasty white guy.
Yeah. That's one thing I was just thinking about too. You know, remember how you and I were talking briefly before, I think, about how I think I had read the first book before I saw that movie with Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey. So then in these books, and especially in this one, I kept picturing Idris Elba as Roland in my head, and I kept having to correct myself because it's so because they make it abundantly clear in this book that there's some race stuff going on because Roland is a white guy and Odetta is black, and there aren't that many black people in his reality. So I kept having to correct myself. It was funny. I'm like, oh, it's not Idris Elba, it's a white guy.
And that's why I didn't even respect that movie, because once I saw that, I was like, oh, so you tried to roll all of the characters up into one, and they just basically broke it down to Roland and Jake, and that was it.
Yeah,
I was like, that's not.
Yeah,
so
especially after having read the first book, it's really sad that they turn it into like this whole YA thing where it seems more about Jake than the Gunslinger, which was disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, like, there was so much more depth with the two characters in Detta and Eddie. They made up so much more as far as when they were going to different areas. Like when you get to the Wasteland, which is the next book, Wasteland, there's a lot of testing of courage that happens that you just couldn't portray with just two characters. They had the quartet for a reason. The quartet was there, and they had the four of them meet for a reason. And and you could tell, like, one thing that I like about Stephen King is you can kind of go along with his creative kind of thought process as he's writing things. And you could tell when he started getting serious about the book series, and he doesn't get serious about the book series, not really until around Wasteland, because then he gives the form to it. Because it's like with the Gunslinger, he didn't know what he wanted it to be. Then you have more depth with this next project. And that's why he even started bringing in, more issues, because I mean, he wanted to, you could tell that he tried to expand his audience. That's why he had the people that he had in there. He's like, let's have a loser, because there's always somebody that's down and out. If you're reading, everybody has that. Let's add, like, the racial kind of connotation. And to his credit, did a pretty good job, because, you lose your legs to somebody pushing you in front of a train. And then we actually have literally on, like, record people doing things just that atrocious to black people. You're going to get, people that are going to go, I can relate to the black rage, and they could just go into.
And that's interesting too, in terms of Odetta, and then I forget that guy's name, but the
Jack Morton,
the fourth guy whose mind and body Roland enters after through the third door, where we find out that he was the one who pushed Odetta in front of the train.
Yeah, that's right, Jack Morton.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like the fourth mission was I guess the third mission, because he thought, oh, this guy, he's supposed to be a gunslinger. But it seems like the main purpose was like, okay, we got to do this in order to fix Data and move on. Instead of, I was like, damn, this is crazy if this guy's going to be on the team. It's like, man, how are they going to reconcile that? But it's like, okay, I see what's going on here. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that was another funny culture shock too, where when Roland was in his body and he goes to the pharmacy to get stuff to heal his wounds, and he's like, "What is this amazing place? This paradise of drugs."
Yeah, and the clerk is like, "This guy's fucking nuts. He's like holding the place up for penicillin."
Yeah,
that was this guy's problem. Like, he doesn't want the good stuff. He doesn't want the opioids. He just wants antibacterials.
yeah, it's so funny.
And then the fact that he calls it Aston instead of aspirin, that was great.
Yeah, that's funny too. Well, yeah, that was
their alphabet's a little bit different, so when you read stuff, it's like different than what we would think it is.
Right. Yeah, it was interesting too. Like you were talking about, Parker, that you said that it doesn't, like, the world doesn't start to expand that much until the third book. And that reminded me, I think, like how we were kind of talking about that before we started this. And if I remember correctly, in the version of the book that I read, there was a little blurb by Stephen King at the end of it that said something about how the third book is when it gets into the backstory of the characters more, and like half of it is flashbacks and half of it carries the story forward with Roland and Odetta and Eddie. So that'll be really interesting to get into that in the third book.
Well, the third book isn't really about the past. The third book gives more depth to where they're at right now. The fourth book, Wizards and Glass, that's when you start learning like a whole lot about where Roland comes from, and that's when you get a lot of the backstory. As a matter of fact, I think Wizards and Glass is probably the best book in the series.
Oh, cool!
Yeah,
that's one of the longer ones too. That's one of the ones that I own a copy of. So that'll be cool because it's a longer one.
Yeah. So from what I heard, people seem to praise Wizards and Glass the most. So I'm looking forward to checking that one out when we get to that.
Cool. All right. So yeah, that was interesting too, because we talked about Detto a lot, but yeah, Eddie was an interesting character too, and all that stuff about how basically him getting involved with Roland forced him to just quit heroin cold turkey, and he had to become this like gun-toting bad guy, which was interesting because, like we were talking about, it's one of the ways that these loser characters become heroes. And then, of course, Roland gets involved with helping Eddie rescue his brother, who has been kidnapped by the drug dealer who, at the start of the book, Eddie is bringing cocaine to across the borders of different countries so he can exchange the cocaine for heroin. And then there's that interesting part where Roland takes over the mind of Eddie, and then as everyone is getting off the plane, he opens the magic door portal in the little bathroom, and then they stash his drugs in there, and then come back through the door later to get them. That was really quick thinking.
Well, I like to say Eddie. Eddie has like a lot of problems.
Yeah,
but he is basically a street genius. He's like,
exactly.
It sounds like he can talk to anybody and almost get out of it any situation just by talking to him. Like there's a part where he gets interrogated, and he knows like all the right things to say in order to get out of that interrogation scot-free without any charges.
Yeah, that was pretty skillful for sure. Yeah,
he didn't have a lawyer. He didn't have a lawyer. He did it all himself.
Yeah, that's a good point. He's got the street smarts, like you said. That's one way that he can be deceptively useful, even though he kind of seems like a loser of a character in some ways, like we talked about, right?
Yeah, he's kind of like the mouth, you know. He can talk his way through things.
Yeah.
Well, that becomes his biggest asset as things progress, because he, like, rhetoric itself is a skill. So if you rhetorically start jousting with people, like, and there's a lot of people that they come in contact with that they rhetorically joust with, and that's the number one thing that Eddie Dean he always excels at. And he was tested, and you kind of find out that his past and the trauma that he's gone through and his relationship with his brother is what drove him to being what he is. So, like, one of the biggest things that comes into I guess question and comes into the skill set of Eddie Dean is the flashbacks that he has with his brother, because his brother was his primary tormentor but was also his mentor. And you get to see that, like, dichotomous kind of relationship that you can have and I thought it was actually brilliant to even bring this up, how you can have a traumatic kind of experience with a family member, but that experience can also be the best experience that you had. And you can have a duality of a relationship with one person, and the fact they can be your tormentor and also somebody that mentors you and gets you through the hardest points of your life.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, kind of for both Eddie and Odetta in a way, because with Eddie, with his brother, they kind of bonded more than anything else in their life over the terrible experience of becoming heroin addicts. And then in a somewhat similar way to Odetta, or I guess maybe a different way, her alternate personality, Detta, she's like crazy and violent, but she also does tough, badass things that Detta herself would never do. Like, she gets herself out of her bonds and fakes being asleep, and almost gets away with killing Roland and Eddie a few times. So that she's kind of like resourceful from her torturous experience in that way too. But then obviously only in her more crazy personality, which is, I'm wondering if that's going to be like a positive way that she kind of integrates both of those personalities into one in the third book, like you were saying, Parker.
Oh yeah,
I would say because the feel I got is that we didn't get a complete character yet. So I was like, okay, let's see how this character develops, you know. I felt like Eddie was pretty well developed. But Detta, I'm assuming, Parker, that Detta is going to be a bit different in the next book. So, you know, I'm not casting judgment on her yet because she's not a completely developed character. And what we were given a taste of is what I assume is going to be very different from what we get in the next book.
Yeah, she becomes a lot different. I mean, you can definitely tell that she was once what she turns out to be, because it's not like they just forget about it. She just, well, it becomes an integrated single personality. So the fact that it becomes a single integrated personality makes it so you still see like portions of Datawalker. As a matter of fact, that's becomes the voice that guides her when she has to shoot later on. So it's like when somebody has to die, like, you know, she's like, well, you know, I don't want to kill him. It's like, this motherfucker has to die, and then it comes out, and that's like that's how it goes. And I mean, like, but the thing about it is we all kind of have that voice. She just had it as a whole personality, and who could blame her when you lose your legs? Now the character that becomes the most interesting, that doesn't seem interesting now, is Jake, because he's just a kid. But Jake is important because he becomes the heart of the group. Because, like you said, everybody else is a scoundrel. Jake is the only innocent. He was always a kid. So the fact that he's innocent and these people that were scoundrels, we've even talked about it. They were awful people before they came into contact with Roland. And Roland, as you find out, especially in Wizards and Glass, he's not really that great either. The only thing that really kind of keeps them on the path of being kind of good is Jake at one point, because Jake is an innocent. He's the heart of the entire group. He becomes so important that the mission isn't corrupted due to the fact that Jake's there. He's so important. And when you think about the characters that come into play during this, Jake is the only thing that can really make this group really even something that's stable.
Oh wow. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. I forgot that aspect of Jake. What happens with him in the second book again? Because I know that Roland kills him at the end of the first book, and then he has constant guilt about that throughout book 2, right?
Well, we get to see Jake, like how it happened, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Killed.
You guys are downplaying one of the most important parts of the book, though, which was the split that Roland had to go through before he actually saved Jake, because he had to deal with literally dealing with two realities, and it split his mind until he could actually save Jake. And that's something that's important, because literally that was a good and evil version of Roland that was fighting with itself within his own mind. So those were two different realities that could even happen. If he didn't save Jake, he wouldn't actually be as good as he turns out to be.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think we come to know that just from the first book, at least, that Roland is kind of morally dubious when he's left to his own devices. Like,
and that's what Jake does, because that's like, if we really break it down, like, if Roland wanted to detach himself from either one of the two characters, he could easily do that. He could be like, well, Eddie Dean, I mean, cool, he's cool and he does his thing or whatever, but he's a junkie at heart, right? Odetta, she was like a truculent bitch, really. Like, at some point in time, you could always drop her. The only person that didn't deserve any kind of hurt and deserved nothing but the saving of the world, no matter which world it was, whether it was Roland's world or it was, you know, the actual world that we live in, was Jake. Why would you do the mission if you don't do it for the children, if you don't do it for the innocents?
Right.
That gave him so much, that gave him a lot of form to what later on happens within the book series, but that also gave him form as far as how he wanted to even make it through. He was sick, but his mission, he thinks it's the Dark Tower, but part of that mission was also saving Jake. That's why he was so distraught and he was so split before he actually did save him.
Right. Yeah, that's true. The like morality in all of the characters is really complex in this, and Roland for sure. He's like kind of neutral morality. He'll do like any bad thing he has to do in order to fulfill the ultimate morally good goal that he's pursuing.
And nobody knows how good that goal is. Not really, not even Roland. So who gives the form to what is supposed to be good and what is supposed to be evil if you don't make boundaries around that. Jake does that for Roland because he's a gunslinger. It's like part of his description is to kind of be morally dubious anyway, because you're good but you like kill people. Like, and who's to say that your morals are the morals that need to be propagated the most? But if you have an innocent that looks up to you and goes like, yo, what you're doing, this is righteous, you can kind of at least go, all right, this person doesn't have any, personal gain of anything. I mean, he's a kid. Like that's a very big portion of why he's important, because he is a kid. Because when we're children, we don't have stakes. We don't have things like you have moral responsibilities. You have to, like, a lot of people don't even like the job that they have because they have to show up and they need the money, right? But I mean, you do a lot of things just to get that money that you might not necessarily morally be, and then you become more devoid from that. But as a kid, you're like, I'm going to do everything right because it's all about morals and it's all about what I think and it's all about, and that's great because you always maintain that innocence, but that also drives the adults within your life. A lot of people you'll hear go like, I didn't really have a meaning until I had my children. Mm-hmm. And the fact that Jake is a child, that plays a big part for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. Like you were saying, that ties into his innocence. The fact that he's a child, he's the only innocent one out of all of them. Yeah, that's an interesting point for sure. I hadn't really thought about Jake for that reason in terms of like the scope of where the whole series is going. So that's very interesting. Had you thought about that aspect before, Dusty?
I was going to say, like, I didn't even know what Jake was all about. I thought Jake was just kind of a device that Stephen King was using to tie our world to his world in some way. I didn't know that he was going to be more significant. Like I said, I've never seen the movie, so
it's not worth watching.
Yeah, it's not, like, I haven't been tainted by it yet. I probably will watch it after I finish all these books just to see how bad it is. Hey, man, hey, Parker, I watched the Atlas Shrugged trilogy. That's how masochistic I am when it comes to reading books.
Spend an hour in a sauna, do something better for your life, man. That's not going to expand any of it. It literally will make you dumber, and it'll almost make you hate the series like you didn't read it. Like, honestly, like, yo, man, when I did that, I was like, yo, you read all 7 books and this is what you came up with? I should kick you in your chest until I should kick you to sleep, bro. Like, that's what I felt like as soon as I saw that.
Yeah.
It was upsetting. So just like I said, if there's, and this is, it's a good series. I mean, Stephen King towards the end especially, he did a lot of things that I like didn't necessarily like, but he had a lot of good ideas within this series. Don't taint it by like watching that fucking movie, man. Like, honestly, like there's people that like honestly like it's up there with, like the thought that whatever like Hitler did to make everybody think the Holocaust was okay. It's up there with that level of bad. Like that's how bad it is.
And man,
like, it makes me just want to watch it more.
Well, I mean,
the only thing I like about that is Idris Elba, because he's always good at playing a badass. But like Matthew McConaughey in that, who plays the Dark Man in that, he was really terrible. And I'm a fan of his acting, but he was not good in that movie.
You needed somebody that was like a really good bad guy. Like you need a Willem Dafoe, or like Willem Dafoe would have been a way better, and especially since he's
or
old.
Gary Oldman.
Yeah, but exactly, like anybody that's like good at just being just a bad guy. I would have even taken Steve Buscemi because he's too ugly to be a good guy. So, and then like even when he's never a really good guy, he's a goodish guy or he's a bad guy, and that's the way. As a matter of fact, you know who they should have taken out of retirement? Joe Pesci. Bring that dude back, and then he would have been great. Just short, just angry. He's like, hey, what's going on? Why do you want me to make it to the tower, huh? That would be great. It'd be great.
Yeah, they put in John Leguizamo or something.
That he does gay stuff. We can't John doesn't do anything serious anymore. Like, honestly, we should have known that John wasn't going to do anything serious when he was in Super Mario Bros. Man,
that was a long time ago. I'm glad I never watched that movie.
It's
don't
a fun
want
movie.
to.
like
I watched it when it came out in theaters. I thought it was okay then.
well, if you're
I thought it was weird as hell, but I was like, that was okay, I guess.
if you're a fan of weed, and you have a Saturday night, that is a great combination. Just weed and just Super Mario Bros. Because you won't get angry like
Yeah.
you would if you were sober. and went like, did you disrespect my intelligence? You'd be like, you know, they needed money, they needed to cut a check, and Nintendo was just passing out checks left and right. I can understand, you know?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And man, like in terms of the movie too, like Matthew McConaughey is good at playing at least morally questionable character. Like my favorite performance of his of all time for sure is season 1 of the show True Detective, where he's this fucking super nihilistic alcoholic cop, and he does a great job of playing someone so like fucking somber and nihilistic. He could have done that sort of thing in the movie without just like acting cartoonishly evil like he kind of was in the movie.
You know, maybe he got some bad direction.
And he's
That
too
could be the
handsome.
case, too.
He's too handsome to be anything like a direct bad guy. Bad guys have to be, like I said, Willem Dafoe is in a way kind of good looking, but he's not good looking enough to be like.
He's good at playing villains, man.
Correct.
In that
I mean,
first
because he's got the
Spider-Man
face.
movie, he was the fucking best Spider-Man villain in all of the Spider-Man movies for sure.
Another great bad guy, Kevin Bacon. If they had Kevin Bacon do it, it would have been a better. It would have been a Kevin. No, like after Footloose,
Hollow
man,
Man.
that dude basically is nothing but.
Yeah, he was good in Hollow Man. Yeah.
Yeah, that, and he was just recently in another one where he was the bad guy. It was the one with Ryan Reynolds, the R.I.P.D. and that was a couple years ago. R.I.P.D. But he played the bad guy in that, and he did a great job. Like I said, he does a really good bad guy, and that would have been a better Dark Man than any of the people that they chose.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Gary Oldman, he's the best at bad guys.
Yeah, he would have been good too.
Yeah, I'm still gonna watch it. I will put myself through that torture. It's just gonna be later on. Hey man, it's not going to make me think different. Like I'm able to separate the stuff out. And
I think that like if you are gonna watch it, it is probably a good idea to do so after you've seen the whole series, so it doesn't like screw things up in your head like it did for me.
Oh yeah. I mean, it does. I mean, thinking of Roland, if I had seen the Idris Elba one, knowing what Roland actually was, like a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white guy, or I guess a blonde, or a gray-haired, white-eyed, or a blonde, gray, blue-eyed dude that's like, you know, just basically a white, like that ruins all of the interactions that Odetta and Roland had. And that's like more than half of the reason. Like, even when she becomes sweet, she always goes like, "You two honkies, suckers," or you two white boys, or whatever. Like that's like something that's a constant theme within it. And I was like, how could you take that out and just make all the characters into like one character, and then just leave Jake as like the sidekick? And then also, I think like the movie was only an hour and a half long, so I'm like,
yeah, something like that.
So I'm
yeah,
like, you had 7 books and you made it into an hour and a half. Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it too. Like I'm sure they shoved way too much shit into there, but I mean the movie still
like the curse of Stephen King adaptations. Like they almost always end up being not so great.
Yeah.
Well, unless it's Carrie. Like it depends on the length. If it goes over 500
If it's his
pages,
cocaine days, those are all the good ones, right?
well, he made them digestible. Like, you know.
Dude, you've got to read it, Dusty. That's my favorite classic one of his. It's so awesome.
I'll get to it eventually.
The
I'll get
spider.
to it.
That's some good shit right there.
Yeah, man. Yeah. God is actually a turtle. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh
But
boy.
it's true.
There's all kinds of thoughts about that. I mean, that sounds like real close to Buddhist thought process. But you know what? Never mind. This dude out here just drinking stuff. It's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some oh yeah, we should talk about some of that weird kind of stuff in this book. So you mentioned the lobstrosities, right, Dusty? Those are
data chain, data like
data
they're weird.
Yeah.
Like I was like, really? And then I was kind of trying to look stuff up about them, and apparently there's like people with T-shirts with lobsters that say Data Chung on it. It's like, oh, like maybe I might indulge. Who knows?
Yeah, I would definitely buy a shirt that's just an inside joke like that.
Or I'd just have a picture of Jordan Peterson, with like a quote coming out of his mouth saying Data Chung. Talking about lobsters.
That's like two inside jokes in one. Oh yeah, that I didn't even think of the Jordan Peterson angle of the lobstrosities. I wonder if they're like a cosmically good force or a cosmically evil force.
I know somebody has to like talk to Peterson. It's like, have you ever read? Well, probably he's never read it, but ask him about this book and if he's familiar with lobstrosities.
We talked before about how Stephen King, a lot of the stuff in some of his books, at least, is like has a really religious aspect to it, and especially in terms of the like supernatural aspects of it. Like there's the other realm of Ka, and we know that he has his own universe that shows up lightly in all of his different books, and it's like you basically have to be this cosmically good force fighting this cosmically evil force in a lot of the books. Well, we see that in The Stand, for example, for sure, which we talked about before. It's really explicit in that.
Yeah, certainly. I think it's less at the forefront here.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're only 2 books in, so maybe it develops.
Here's the thing. The Stand and this book series are intimately intertwined. So yeah, that's going to come up.
Okay.
Which that's when I start getting like kind of like weird about the book because
the name Flag came up in this book. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well,
there's a connection.
Well, it's at some point in time you do start getting like a little bit of ego jacking off that he does, but it's cool. Like,
we did get it. We got it straight in this book where
someone references The Shining,
Eddie
right?
does.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Eddie references The Shining, but he references the movie version of The Shining.
Yeah. The Shining movie.
Like I said, man, like that's like of all the things that start making the book series kind of weird, it's like you start getting a little too in this book, it's like it's charming. You're like, oh, he put himself in. That's kind of funny. Then like towards like the end, you start going like, yeah, okay, like I get it. You're really popular and everybody likes your shit. That's cool.
Oh yeah, you said that later on in the series he puts his self in one of the books too, right?
Yeah, man. And that's like, and the way he does it, it's almost like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, you know what? I'm not going to give away anything, but when he writes himself into the book, just there's no. I thought it was kind of tacky to like ego jack off the way that he did, and not even the way he did it in this book. It was charming, almost like a cameo from Stan Lee in like a Marvel movie. You know what I'm saying? Like that it's like, oh, you see, he's just enjoying the success. In like towards the 7th book, you go like, Nick, did you make yourself like part of the plot, bro? I got shit out of you for that. Oh my god,
we can't get to the Dark Tower unless we consult this author Stephen King about what we have to do to defeat the Dark Man.
Did you read the entire? You know what, man? Like, I'm not gonna give it away, but that was scarily close to how it almost goes. Scarily close. Scarily close. Where I was like, dude, you're a super asshole for even making me read that, bro. That'd be like funny. Okay, like essentially that would be like if Stan Lee went like, look, man, Doc Ock never existed. It was all me. And you'd be like, wait, like you, Stan Lee, like you, the actual old guy? Like, yeah, bro.
I wonder if they're going like something close to that route in the new Spider-Man movie that I don't know if it's out yet, but I haven't seen it because, you know, they're apparently Doc Ock is back and they're bringing a whole bunch of other characters from the other Spider-Man movie. I think they're just trying to come up with story reasons to go, hey, guess what? Marvel also owns Spider-Man now, so we're gonna figure out some story reasons to add all of the Spider-Man characters into the Disney universe now.
Well, it was more like Sony was just like, yo, man, there's a lot of money, and like we got a lot of rights, so how can we make the most money out of these rights? And they're like, yo, man, we got 3 different Spider-Mans. We've got 3 different Spider-Mans, bro, and everybody liked all of them for different reasons. You know what would make us a lot of money? And then, you know, everybody got together and then like, they're like, oh my God, you know, this is making the most money that we ever thought in this age of digital everything. And that's just, but you know what? That's big ups to them. Big ups to the movie industry for not coming up with anything original and taking shit from comic books or just remaking whatever fucking was successful before. Shout out to Stephen King for just like, you know, cashing out and then like throwing all of his friends under the bus for having weird political views. Shout out to all them motherfuckers.
Like J.K. Rowling, like we talked about before,
right?
Right?
That's what I'm talking about. Yes. That's the most honestly, like I don't know if Stephen King's ever gonna watch this, but like I'm looking at you, Stephen. I'm looking directly at you. You a bitch ass nigga. That's all I'm saying.
That would be awesome if he watched that. That would be amazing.
And then he'd be like, yo, I don't know why, but with the and you know, and read that in the Datawalker voice too, motherfucker. You know what I'm talking about. Suck my whole dick with that. And J.K. Rowling's, I'm down with you, especially since I've seen what's been going on at the colleges. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. You know, hashtag turfs are out here.
That's like how people with the new Dave Chappelle comedy special thought that Dave Chappelle was literally being serious when he said that he's a turf in that special.
No, he literally contradicts himself like almost immediately.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is like most people that get offended by a lot of shit, they're just like, they're not funny. So they don't understand what funny is. And then the rest of us are going like, yo, man, like if you really thought about it, like that's even more deeply funny than we originally thought. Like they just sit up there and they're like, listen, I don't know. I'm upset with things. I'm upset with people. Things happen. And because they're like that, there's always going to be somebody that's going to be upset with like comedy because comedy is truth if it's good comedy. And the truth fucking hurts. So there you go.
The best comedy is offensive, in my opinion, because it's true, but it's a harsh truth that makes people uncomfortable, which is why it's so funny.
Exactly. Like that's what you got to know. Like the best jokes are the ones where not everybody comes along. Like the best jokes are where there's somebody in the back going like, I don't know how. And then you like, and everybody goes like, ha, that motherfucker's upset. And like, and that's for all of us, but like we've all been the end of that. Like there's been black jokes that are at the expense of black people. There's been white people jokes. There's been like everybody. If you live, people are making fun of you, man. And you've just got to be like, look, man, we all are funny. Everybody's funny. Like literally, like if anybody thinks that they're not funny, I'm like, yo, man, you've taken yourself way too serious. You really just have. I was like, look, man, like I do stupid shit every single day. And if anybody points out how retarded it is, I'll be like, yeah, dog, it is. But I want to live. And this is what I do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All the best comics make fun of everyone, including themselves. So there's no special protected group of people that can't be made fun of.
Well, this is how you know that Dave Chappelle is a genius because he went against the two people that you can't really go against, and he came out on top, which was trans people and Jews. Yo, man, since Hitler did that shit that he did, yo, man, you can't
And
make
white
fun of the
women.
Jews at all. Exactly. Yo, you can make fun of white women, man. Everybody that's white women right now are like, that's like the best thing to make fun of because everybody goes like, isn't it funny how they like all just complain about everything and everybody's like, oh, that's funny. Like that's
I
like
bet most of the people offended by Dave Chappelle are white women. Probably middle class or upper class white women.
Honestly, but like if you get to a certain level of white woman, like everything offends them. So it's not like that was just gonna happen. So like let's just cut that off. I'm talking about like if we're talking about reasonable white women, no, there's nobody reasonable that's mad at Dave Chappelle. But there are like maybe quasi-reasonable people from other groups that might be mad at Dave Chappelle just because he's like making more money than they are, and he's poking holes in the storyline that they're making money off of. So that's the only reason that he has as much activism. Because if you looked at the person that actually went after Dave Chappelle the hardest at Netflix, and you looked at their Twitter, yo, that person was like funnily racist. like where you looked at it and you were like, yo, like he was going like said that there was like actually legitimately made a tweet that was like, there's this fat ass Asian in front of me that looks like a bitch from the back. Legitimately said that shit. And I was like,
wow.
Oh,
yo, like that was, and I might have gotten it kind of wrong, but not wrong enough. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it was really that bad. It was up to that level. And when you really look at anybody that gets that mad about anything, like you realize they're just like, they're clowny. They're just caricatures of people.
Mm-hmm.
hey Parker, I found a 30-minute clip I made of the narrator for this book. Some of it's him voicing Odetta Walker. You want to hear it?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, hold on a second.
Authentic American apple pie heroin. Thank you, bro. Then she had noosed the belt around the young woman's left leg, halfway between the young woman's crotch and where her left knee had been, until that fabled A-train had come along. George had heard someone say to someone else that the young black woman's last words before passing out had been, "Who was it, muffa? I'm gonna hunt him down and kill his ass." There was no way to punch holes far enough up for the elderly black woman to notch the belt, so she simply held on like grim old death until Julio, George, and the Paras arrived.
Now, imagine that. Like, that's what I was listening to. It sped up a bit more, but
No, that's
That
fine.
was-
That was what I expected. I was like, that's right. That was right for the cause. I was like, and this is what I love about it, right? You and I both know as black dudes, we both know that was bad, but he didn't. He was like,
Yeah.
I guarantee you, he left the studio. He was like, I fucking killed it, bro.
either that or it's like, fuck, I can't believe actually, hey man, the paycheck was good. That's about all I can say.
Which, you know, it's like, you know, honestly, like, big ups to him. Like he probably went like, yo, man, it's a Stephen King novel. I'm doing my best. And everybody like in the studio, they were all white too. They were like, hey man, I once experienced a black person on the subway and it sounded somewhat similar to that. Let's print it.
Yeah. So like I said, that's why it was so funny. But it was just like, man, you hear it often enough, though, it becomes routine, and you kind of don't criticize it anymore. It's just okay, because there are some long diatribes that she goes on for a while.
Yeah, I think she did go on some kind of tirade at some point where she like started like aggressively going against whiteness, which I was like, which this is what upsets me, right? Like the diatribe about whiteness is so well rehearsed that like even like it sounded really close to a BLM rally, like some of the shit that she was saying. And I was like, yo, man, like it's like we haven't changed up the rhetoric in like literally years. Like I was like, yo, man, it was so well done that I was like, yo, man, we've got to change up our whole message. If we've been saying the same shit for literally like, how old is this book? Like that's like 30 years
90s?
now. Like
Yeah.
that's right. It's like we've been doing the same shit for 30 years and they still don't care. So we should probably change up the whole strategy because they've caught on. We heard a white guy that thought he did an awesome job impersonating. And this is the thing. I've been black for 33 years, haven't missed a day, and it was kind of good.
Yeah, it wasn't horrible. Like, I think the funny part of it is that he got it decent, and he's just like this Dan Carlin sounding white dude.
Well, all that means is that he's just experienced the world. He's been cussed out by a black woman before, because that's a unique experience, and only a few people have experienced it. But when you do, you remember the tone, and you remember the head movement. You know all of this. Look like it's a viper about to just strike you.
Yeah.
Every side, but it's cool. Like if there's a white dude that could do a good enough like impression, then big ups to him, making mad loot off of doing Datawalker impressions.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to do that impression in a way that doesn't sound ridiculous too. Like I think like a lot of things in Stephen King books, they sound ridiculous even in the books, but he's a really good writer, so it's easy to suspend your disbelief, but it's way harder to do it in a movie version, which is why so many of the movie adaptations of his books are bad.
Yeah. Movie adaptations are hard to do anyway, because it's like taking something from one medium to another, and especially a medium that had no like visuals, because it's kind of what was the most shocking about hearing that within an audio medium when I was used to just reading it was it didn't bother me in my own head because I just had my own kind of way of thinking about like. So when Dusty even brought that up, I was like, that's even an odd thing to say. But the fact that it was so different basically made it so in my opinion, I thought that it kind of tainted the experience because I wasn't even focused on that at all. Like it kind of took away from the storyline. Even hearing the audio version that Dusty played almost took a little bit away from it because I didn't think about how it was interpreted outside of like my own mind. And I had my own way of thinking about it. Maybe that like took a layer away. But when you can actually have the theater of your own mind instead of actually having like a movie, then there's certain things that people take liberties with and they'll say weren't important to the storyline, and it might be the most important thing to the storyline to you. So you want an untainted version of what the experience could be. So I think there's always going to be something taken away when you take it outside of the theater of your own mind. Yeah,
for sure. I kind of think that with Odetta too, she was like ramping up her anti-whiteness just to provoke them because she wanted them to attack her in some way because she was that crazy, and also because if it's closer, it's easier for her to do something like take Roland's gun or something like that. And like for example, how she was going on and on. A few of her rants are like you want to rape me, don't you? You're gonna rape me, aren't you? Almost like she was excited about it. That was kind of crazy.
To me, it's like she kind of planted this idea in her head in order to be angry, and her narrative of why she was there was because they were going to rape her. So she had created like this defense mechanism. That's kind of what I think. Like it's a defense mechanism. So she's like already assuming they're there to rape her. So that's when Detta comes out and gets nasty with them.
Well, that's the whole point of Detta. Detta is a defense mechanism in the fact that she exists in the first place. Because the whole thing that made Detta exist was the fact that Odetta was this, she was an upper class black woman. She's an upper class black woman that basically is sweet, knows all of the right things to say within polite society, but at the end of the day, doesn't have any of the qualities to be dangerous enough to be somebody that is deemed a threat. So Detta is the threat that Odetta could not be on her own. And that's the whole reason why Detta is necessary for the gunslinger portion, because you have to be hardened to be able to kill somebody. Odetta could never kill anybody. Detta can kill motherfuckers easily.
Yeah, for sure. Like we were talking about earlier, that her, like the darker aspect of her personality can allow her to do things that the Odetta personality herself is incapable of doing. Yeah, for sure. And I think like you were talking about in terms of how she, like, you have to be hardened to be a gunslinger, that's kind of similar to how we were talking before about how Eddie joining Roland's quest, it kind of hardens him and makes him more heroic. Especially, like, that's the interesting thing about how we mentioned earlier the interaction between Eddie and Odetta, how he falls in love with the Odetta part of her personality, and they even have sex as that personality, and then it's his love for her that urges him to protect her and makes him more heroic too, which is interesting.
I have some questions, because there's a couple things I was a little bit confused about. So when it comes to the characters, do they come from different timelines? Because I know they kind of briefly mentioned that Odetta's kind of from Jim Crow era, and Eddie has a conversation with Odetta, and I think he calls people black, and she gets like really offended by that.
Right. She wants to be called Negro, right?
Yeah, and then he's like, "Damn, that's right." Like in his time period, calling someone Negro is racist. So
Right.
it's like the opposite. It's kind of something they have to get past. So thinking about that, when Roland came back the third time, what time period was that?
You probably know the answer to this, Parker, but I just want to give my guess first. Like, so it seemed to me like maybe Odetta was from an earlier period of history of the same reality as Eddie, perhaps, and the fourth guy, like the assassin guy, he was from the same time period as Eddie. But those were just my assumptions, really, now that I think about it. So I don't really actually know. I'm not sure it tells us. Does it?
Well, the third guy, he bricked Odetta and he pushed Jake. So that's why I'm a little confused.
Yeah,
Like,
Jack
am
Morton,
I confused? Am I
Jack
confused
Morton,
here?
his only reason for existing was to basically perpetuate the hate that made them strong enough to be gunslingers. That's what he ends up being. So he travels through, he just exists, and he's kind of this asshole that exists in New York, which they're all around the same area. But Jack Morton is basically one of the perpetuators of a lot of their misery.
Yeah, that's why I was confused, because how could he have both touched Detta and Jake's life?
Because he's just an old asshole. He was from like the 30s, and then he was just an old guy that wanted to bully a kid. That was what was the whole thing. It was kind of like, even when they got into his psyche, like Roland didn't like being inside Jack Morton's head. He got kind of a skeevy kind of feeling about it, like he was a piece of shit. That was the whole point behind it. And he was supposed to be the essence of all the bad things that actually exist. So the fact that he became the bad thing that also united was kind of part of that too. It's, if you think of it on a cerebral level of what Jack Morton was, all of the toughness or all of the cruelty that made each one, even Jake, because if Jake didn't find out that he was going to die, like that's the only thing that took any innocence away from him. If he hadn't gone through and basically pissed off and made each one of them in his own individual way, bring out something within themselves they didn't know existed, with Odetta Walker, to defend herself because she didn't know that she was going to lose her fucking legs until Jack Morton pushes her in front of a train. Jake didn't know that the world was full of cruel people until Jack Morton pushes him in front of a car, and then Jack Morton, being the person that he is, comes into Eddie Dean's life as just an antagonist in general. So every last one of them needed the pressure of Jack Morton to actually become the gunslinger portion that they became.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just like, how is this guy going throughout the ages and just fucking with people? And I was
did you
just
think
trying to find out.
did you think that maybe he could travel through magic doors too, or something like that?
I was just like, I just didn't understand his, like, if he was like doing this throughout his whole life, or he just kind of just like shows up here and there, like some weird, in some weird, magical way. I don't know. I was just like, what's with this weird guy?
No, he
And then,
was
Okay.
well, he was kind of like who was it? The Zodiac killer? No, it wasn't the Zodiac killer. It was the BDK killer.
Mhm.
And like BDK, he had like a killing spree where he killed a bunch of people. Then he like took some time off, and like I think he took off like a decade, and then he just started killing people again because he was like, I'm bored.
Yeah,
Didn't have anything
'cause
else to do. And
Wow.
Jack Morton, he struck me as that kind of character that just kind of goes like, I've always been an asshole, but today I just feel like being an extra asshole. It's like I got away with it the first time. I pushed some black chick in front of some shit. I fucked around with this junkie guy. I pushed this kid in front of some shit. That's just what I do.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
then
I kind of got the impression that he was maybe getting orders from someone, like he was a hitman or an enforcer for some sort of criminal organization.
He might have been, but the whole thing was when Roland inhabited his mind. Remember, he always got like the skeevy thing where there was like another person that was kind of like inside of his head. I think that might have been psychosis or something like that, or that might have been the hate of the world.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because he depth charged Data, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I actually laughed when I heard that term because I was like, Stephen King, like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're making up these terms. It's like now, whenever I hear about someone dropping a brick from a building, I'm gonna call it depth charging. It's like completely cemented in my brain. Like, it's not gonna be simply dropping a brick from a building. Someone's getting depth charged.
That shows how good of a writer he is.
Yeah, that's what I was like, man, master stroke. You got me to think of some new vocabulary that I'm gonna use from now on. I hate you, Stephen King.
You could say I almost think of that. It sounds to me like slang for taking a shit. Time to go do a
that's
charge.
too. That's what I thought. That's why I thought it was so funny. Like, yeah, depth charging. But I think he named it that because of the nature of depth charges. Like, you just drop it and see if it's going to hit something. See if it's going to. So it sounded like a lot of the times, whenever he was dropping bricks, there were a lot of misses involved, and the data was like a direct hit.
If he was just like evil, like just evil because he felt like it, like you say too, Parker, that makes him an even more evil character for sure.
Yeah, I was trying to hit the people on the head with bricks, man.
Well,
and then I was laughing because he was wearing like goofy, oversized clothes on purpose, just so he could like blend in afterwards.
See that's the whole point behind it, because it's like he's just an agent of chaos. He's an agent of chaos, but they needed that chaos to be put there to give them everything that they got to eventually like have, because you have to have a little bit of hate to like be a gunslinger in general. Like that's why what I like about the personalities of all of the gunslingers that are there, especially when you find out how they all interact with one another, it's a delicate balance of different personalities of what everybody else is lacking. So like Odetta looks at the world just differently because she is a black woman. You need a woman's perspective because you need a woman's perspective, and you need a perspective of a black character because they don't, especially if you're black in America, you don't experience the same kind of version of reality. There's just whatever you want to say about that, you just see things differently. You just do. So they needed that. They needed Jake to actually give them something to lighten them all up because everybody was so hardened, and Jake was the least hardened of the group. And they needed that to have somebody that, because you need naivete to a certain extent to believe in the good in the world. Because if all you have is just the world, it's just going to, and Roland's from a dying world, so he has even more of a reason to be hardened. Eddie, he's silly, but he's like street smart, and he's only silly because he's street smart. He almost uses his silliness to survive and to thrive within situations that would crumble other people. And because he does that, and because he has dealt with things that way, he becomes an asset to the team and in unique ways. Like even when he was helping out Roland, while he was also withdrawing from heroin, when he got his fingers chopped off by the lobstrosities, which also becomes a big thing too, having to learn how to shoot with only 2 fingers instead of having your full hand. Which
we forgot to even mention that. Yeah, throughout the book, Roland has to shoot left-handed, even though he's normally right-handed, and he's missing 2 fingers, right?
That's right, and he also loses his like trigger finger and everything to the lobstrosities, but he learns how to shoot with his ring finger, and that's also something that's pretty big because it's like he's the most adaptable character that's ever existed, honestly.
With your ring finger, man, that seems awkward as hell.
It's
great when you gotta do. He's a gunslinger.
It's great when heroes have challenges like that. It's like how John McClane has to go around barefoot throughout the first Die Hard movie.
Yeah, I mean, he solidifies his status as a badass. It's like, listen, even if I have to shoot and I'm like missing shit, like the dude's gonna be shot.
Yeah, exactly. That's cool too, like the contrast between Roland's guns and the other guns that multiple characters notice too. Like he has these giant hand cannons, and then he discovers like a machine gun at one point, and everyone else is all astonished by how heavy his giant hand cannon guns are.
Oh yeah, and everybody becomes gunslingers and gets their own guns, but yeah, the fact that I think it's like, and they are big. They're like 45s. So yeah, like I mean, and if you've ever shot a 45 before, that is a substantially heavy piece of machinery. So yeah, like I mean, you've got to be strong. You got to be a tough person to do that.
Yeah. Well, and 45 in a revolver for sure.
That's a cool challenge that he goes through too. That a bunch of his bullets get wet, and then he eventually, at one point, he has to, when he's possessing the mind of that guy named Jack, is when he has to devise a sort of scheme to be able to steal the bullets. That part is interesting too.
Oh yeah, and that was something that was interesting in the fact that everything was different between the worlds, but they used the same bullets. Almost like violence is universal, and it's almost like if there's humans around, they'll find a way to make a gun. I thought
that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. That's really interesting. Oh, cool.
So I mean, like, think about it. There was nothing that was the same between the two worlds. They didn't even know how to pronounce the things the same way. They didn't even have the same kind of medicine, nothing. But they knew they had the same kind of bullets. They had the same kind of bullets. That was the only thing that really had any kind of interaction, other than the fact that everybody spoke English too. But even the English was skewed a little bit in Roland's world. So
that reminds me of another interesting thing of when Roland is possessing the different people too. That it mentions first with Eddie, of course, which is when there is the possession that happens, the only thing that changes is the eye color. So it goes to Roland's eye color in whatever body he's inhabiting, and then when he's out of their body, their eye color changes back to their original eye color. I thought that was interesting. Do you think that, like, maybe as you, like how you were talking about the deeper meaning for this, is that maybe connected to something about how the eyes are the window to the soul?
Yeah, most certainly. I mean, like, if a different soul is possessing the vessel, then why wouldn't the eyes be the first indicator of that?
Yeah, that makes sense given like the building mythology and the kind of way that things seem to work in terms of that in Stephen King's worlds. And we know that he has this interconnected universe, which is, that's another interesting thing that Roland mentions a few times in the book, is the Yurka, which he kind of seems to give a few different definitions of it, but one of them seems to be like your quest in life or your moral compass or something like that. And I think it's also the interconnected Stephen King universe. So that's really interesting too. And Dusty, I know you like nerding out just as much of me about these interconnected universes that authors build, like Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere. So that whole aspect is something I'm excited to get into in The Dark Tower.
Yeah, I think it takes just a special level of foresight to try to connect like different worlds and universes together and create like a coherent experience. You know, I know there's several authors we've read that have done similar things. I think one of the most classic is probably Isaac Asimov. He's created kind of a huge world with different stories that you wouldn't even know were connected. There might be like one little thing in the story that you're like, oh, this goes back to this and this goes back to that.
Yeah, like how that character Multivac in those stories we read is in multiple stories that that Isaac Asimov has written.
Right. And there's definitely some governing laws for his universe, and there seems to be an origin story to it that he alludes to. I don't know if he actually tells that origin story, but there's always allusions to it. Actually, there is one-ish kind of one, because I know one of his short stories talks about like the Earth after it became shortly radioactive, but that's another tale for another time.
Yeah.
I forget what's a short story. Well, no, it's not a short story. It's just like a short novel where one of the guys, it's a weird story. Like a guy loses his like cognitive function and he becomes like slowly more cognitively aware. And he had something had transported him to another planet, but the planet that he was on was obviously Earth, and it had undergone some type of nuclear or radiological catastrophe, which is in line with like a lot of what the Foundation series is based off of.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, the Foundation.
Because in the Foundation, series, they're trying to look for Earth, and it's in that far in the future, Earth has become a myth, and their myth of Earth is that eventually they come to find out that there was some type of radiological disaster. They don't know what happened, but people went and spread out amongst the universe after that happened, and nobody really inhabits that planet anymore.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I must not have read that short story or made that connection.
I don't even know what it's called. I just consumed a bunch of Asimov stuff, and that one wasn't like part of any series. It was just a one-off story that he wrote.
Okay. Yeah, he's written tons of short stories, and I've read a bunch of them, but he's written several different collections of them. They're all in that interconnected universe too. It's really great. And I love that Foundation series too. It's my favorite Isaac Asimov series. Have you read the Foundation and the Robot series, Parker?
Not at all.
Oh, I recommend both of them. Like, the Foundation series is really massive in scope and takes place over thousands of years, and it's like basically how we're going to save human civilization over the course of thousands of years. And the Like the robot novels are basically a robot and a human detective working together to solve crimes. And they're both really interesting for different reasons.
The weird thing about like the earlier Foundation books is the premise is almost very Dune-like.
Yeah, that's true.
Like Dune, in Dune, there's prescience, which is kind of like the supernatural version of future telling. But in the Foundation series, they develop a science called, what is it called? Psycho something? Was it?
Psychohistory.
Yeah, they develop a
Yeah.
science called psychohistory, which basically gives them their scientific version of prescience, where they have to make all these decisions based off of the psychohistory that they developed that can tell the future. So
Right.
there's like very similar things that happen. Like I know in Dune, there's a thousands of year span grappling with prescience and being able to manipulate things to go their way. I think very similar thing happens in the Foundation series where they create this science and they try to manipulate things in order to make sure that the human race survives and it doesn't die off. So it has a very, very similar like premise, but the stories are totally different though.
That's interesting. I hadn't noticed that before because I think it's because it probably was like close to a decade, I bet, between when I read the Foundation novels and when I read the Dune novels, because I read the Dune novels so recently within the past couple of years or so. But yeah, that's a really good point. That really is similar to prescience in more of a scientific way, which makes sense too with Asimov because he's like classic hard sci-fi, right? And Dune is more sci-fi fantasy, but they are like, that's why there's so many similarities and differences between sci-fi and fantasy, which is why you can combine the two categories.
Yeah, and the interesting thing too about Foundation, I think the first and last books are more than 30 years apart or something like that. So he like the first books are a little rough, and they don't really focus on particular characters or tell character stories. But when you get to the end of the Foundation series, where Asimov has gotten a lot more practice with writing, he does tend to focus more on characters and character development. And yeah, the last like 2 or 3 Foundation books are my favorite in the Foundation series. Like the first 2 are like, yeah, I get there's a lot of stuff going on, but it's really hard for me to attach to any of these characters because there's just no character development early in the series.
Well, Isaac Asimov, too, is one of the things about Asimov, and one of the reasons that he wrote so many short stories, too, is that he was one of the ways in which he was the epitome of classic hard sci-fi was that he really focused on world building and the plot in terms of science fiction concepts and making them really scientific, and didn't really focus on character development that much for the most part, I don't think. Although maybe kind of the main characters in the robot novels.
Yeah, the robot novels, yeah, definitely there's some characterization going because at least he uses the same character throughout these 3 novels. But he does the same thing with the end of the Foundation series where it follows like these 2 characters. I think one's like a scientist and the other is like, oh yeah, you're the new guy to decide what happens with psychohistory because we've predicted that you're a good decision maker based on the science or something. It's pretty crazy,
right?
But yeah, it's a fun book, a fun series, especially like towards the end.
Cool. I think I'm going to. I think I'm probably going to start reading that King Killer series soon. I didn't realize I had the first book in it.
Yeah, King Killer is like a different beast. I haven't really read anything like it.
It's by Patrick Rothfuss, who wrote that other series that you and I read. What was it called?
Well, we haven't. He's only read the one. He's only written the one series.
Oh, I'm confusing him with who is it that
Brett
wrote?
Weeks?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm confusing him with Brent Weeks, who wrote Night Angel series as well, other than the one that we created, and I haven't read his Night Angel series.
Oh, Night Angel is grim dark as fuck. I gotta get it to you.
Oh yeah,
Like,
I definitely want to read that.
This is definitely grim dark. When I get I have to recheck them out, because when I listened to them, I wasn't collecting the audiobooks like I am now.
Okay.
But I'll check them out again so you can listen to them, because I was like, man, this guy is pretty grim dark. Like,
cool.
I'm surprised I hadn't heard of him before.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, man. I'm looking forward to that. This will be a smooth transition back into the book here, I think. I was reading I was looking through my books earlier today to look for a new book to read, and I got pissed off because I was going through stacks of books for books that I hadn't read, and I had already read so many of them. So I organized them into piles of books that I already have read, and then piles of books that I have not read. And I was noticing, because I knew we were doing the Dark Tower chat later today, which books I have in the series, because I bought some of them at secondhand bookstore, and I have the first 4 and number 6, and then I forget, I don't know what number it is in the series, but one that's called something like Where the Wind Blows, or I don't think that's actually what its title is, but that's one of them. So I have 5 of them that are in the series, I think.
Oh yeah, I could always get a hold of the audiobooks if you need it.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be interesting to, I kind of like to anyway, when I'm reading a long series, read them in a variety of different formats, and read some of them basically just some of them in physical books or ebooks, and some of them in audiobooks. I did that with the Dresden Files series and the Wheel of Time series too.
Yeah, I think most of my stuff is audiobook. I just can't find the time to just sit and read. That's a very like, it's easy to listen to something and then do something else.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're sitting and reading, that's all you can basically do.
Yeah,
you can't multitask when you're doing that. That's
why, to save time, I spend most of my days like listening to an audiobook and podcasts and stuff, and then I read a physical book when I'm taking a shit. So that takes up about an hour a day. So I get lots of reading done.
Well, that's a lot of shit time. Like, how much shit are you shitting?
Well, I pretty much kind of stay in there longer so I can read longer.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that. Make sure you're doing your Kegels. They're going to be becoming continent from sitting on the shitter so long.
That's technique, man. That's an old school
What's
technique.
That?
I said that's an old school technique. That's been tried and true by many a genius. So
well, I also use the great Squatty Potty though, so it's way better for my posture.
Man. In all honesty, like, we need to just have a whole conversation about that. Squatty Potty, it's not just like convenient, it's a necessity, because people are shitting wrong. Like legitimately, like, I'm like, yo, man, people are blowing out their O-rings and shit. Like, you don't even have to do that, man. All you gotta do is like, yo, like, no, I'm just saying,
man. If I could actually be sponsored by anyone, I would only want to be sponsored by the Squatty Potty and the Fleshlight.
Honestly, yo, man, honestly,
the Fleshlight used to be a big sponsor on podcasts.
Honestly, man,
yeah,
do Bathmate. You'd want Bathmate before the Fleshlight. Well, the thing about it is like, the Bathmate actually works, bro. I'm just letting you know. If you're trying to like breathe some like life back into your anaconda, bro, like, fuck with the Bathmate. And if you don't know what it is, man, you you haven't been out in the world, or you're not over you're not over the age of 30. But yo, we start getting to the 30s, man. You start like needing things like that. So like, yo, look it up. Dig pump. Make sure that you.
Bathmate.
That's right, bro. Like honestly, it's like good for your health, like in that area, because apparently, yo, like they've actually done studies on this. You actually get plaque around your groin area, like starting from like your 30s onwards. So that's why you don't get as much blood to the demon, man. And you want to keep that
Really?
up. So
I don't have any problems getting it up.
No. I'm not talking about like you won't have problems getting it up, right? It'll just won't be as like fierce, like because you'll be like, yo, man, because like you have the ragers when you're like younger, but then it's like you just don't get, as much stimulus because you just live life and you're like, yo, man, just college is done. I just don't go.
Is that why like now I can like a girl can come over and we can fuck once, then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take a break for a bit.
That's right. Remember when you were 18? Remember when you were 18? You could fight like that, yo, man. The pump, like it brings that shit back, bro.
Like 6 times in a row.
Yo, man. Even at my prime, that was never happened. But
I only did that like, one time.
Yo, man, like I'm good for you. You're an animal, bro. But like, that
was almost a decade ago, though. To be fair. So,
well, like I said, that's demon time, man. Like I said, when you're like in your early 20s, that's the time. But like now, now it's like a back hurt, man. So I'm just saying, if you wanted to, like, no, listen, legitimately, like now, if you like give me,
it used to be like, man, I've been up for 22 hours already. Do I really want to go and see this chick right now? And like 10 years ago, I would be like, why am I even asking that question? And nowadays, I'm like, man, I kind of just want to fucking go to bed.
And it's also like distance for it. Like you do things in your 20s that you just like 30s me would never like go like beyond an hour to like do a hookup. Like I just wouldn't do it. It's like not in my heart. It's not in my heart to do that.
Yeah, that's too much effort.
So like now, but in my 20s I would have been like 2 hours, 3, maybe even a day. I would have probably driven a whole day.
Yeah. Nowadays, most of the time, I'm like, hey, do you live close by? Okay, well, if you live close by, I can come over, or you could come over here. That'd be good too.
And not that I knock anybody that does that. It's just like I don't have the time. Yeah. Not anymore. Like I'm just doing other things now. So it's just.
Well, it's just that when you're not, like it seems to me, and like maybe when you're not in your 20s anymore, yeah, sex is still awesome, but it's not the only thing that you have to be concerned about 100% of the time in life. You can focus on other things too.
That's like that's the golden portion of being in your 30s, when you're just like, yo, I'm not like, I don't fiend like I used to. It's like it's pretty bad. Like when you're in your 20s, it's like, like you start doing begging stuff. You're like, oh baby, can we? Now I'm like, if nothing happens, I'll just be like, okay. That's just the end of the night. And I'm like, and then you start like even going like, oh, I'm a little thankful because I wasn't really feeling up to it. My legs were hurting.
Did I really want to sleep? And did I really want to sleep over there? Am I really gonna get any sleep? I don't know.
Exactly.
She's got a dog. Her roommate's got a dog.
Exactly. But that's just being dedicated to the game.
I bet it's nice. I bet it's nice to basically be married for that reason, Dusty?
What do you mean, like not have to worry or
not have to be like, I'm at this strange girl's house. Do I really want to sleep over or not?
Yeah. Well, I'll say this: you still have the sleep issues, though. Like, because when you have a kid, you gotta figure out like the right time and can't be like, okay, we hope hopefully she's like in deep REM, so let's kind of get it on before she starts waking up and demanding, I don't want to sleep by myself.
That sounds like being a prisoner. I was about to say that sounds like being a prisoner in your own house. Like you can't even like do the freaky shit no more, man.
No,
It's just-
it's like when you have kids, you want to try to do it on the stealth.
Yeah.
You have to do some
But-
stealth bombings when the
Yeah,
window was there.
I think most people know. I definitely know what it's like to be a kid and catch your parents having sex. It's not fun.
Yeah, like
Oh, you
we've
know.
been caught.
But this is the,
We,
this is the
we weren't
problem.
caught like buck naked, but
Oh, okay.
we're like,
See-
oh shit.
See, this in all honesty, I feel like I'd be one of those dads that would be like, listen, I pay all the bills. Honestly, you're the one that's intruding, bro. Like I would just look at them and they'd be like, "Oh, that's so." I was like, "Listen, when you start paying for stuff, you'll get like really arrogant about what you do in your own house too. Okay, even if
It's
it's
like
an apartment."
you and your wife get horny while you're making breakfast and the kids come out there. Mom and Dad, what are you doing? Hey, get out of our kitchen.
Basically, I was like, "Listen, I told you there's a strict don't come out here before 8 a.m. kind of thing, and then if you come out before 8 a.m. and you catch some shit, listen, we had an agreement. You didn't go through on the agreement, so you see what you see. Okay, I tried to preserve your childhood. You didn't want it to be preserved because you wanted to get out before 8 a.m.
You should have slept in a little. Sleep's good for you.
That's right. I was like, yo, man, I'm sure my kid's gonna have a freaking cell phone because, like, kids are pariahs if they don't have it now. If they're not,
Mhm.
if they're
Right.
not like, like just glitched into the matrix. If they're not plugged in and they're not on Facebook, it's
Man,
almost like they don't
No,
even
I'm
exist.
not gonna. I'm
My
not gonna give
friend-
them access. 'Cause
my
I have a
friend's
daughter,
boy-
and that shit fucks their image up, man.
Yeah, man. My friend's boyfriend convinced her to get their kids tablets for Christmas last year, and they're like 5 and 2. I'm like, man, at least
man.
wait a little bit. Like,
Exactly.
Well,
They
my
don't need-
my
they don't
girl
need to
has
be
a
introduced to porn
tablet,
that quick.
but she doesn't have access to social media.
That's a good idea.
It's
Well-
like it's one of those Amazon tablets, so you can control like absolutely everything, but you can create
Oh.
a profile for them that only shows them kid stuff. Like they can't like go to random internet sites. They can't watch
Okay.
random YouTube shit.
This
Can't
is
watch
what messes that
beheadings
up.
or porn.
This is what
Yeah, and
messes
the
that
App
up.
Store is just all kids games and educational stuff.
One sleepover messes that whole thing up, man.
Well, I got I
I was about to
guess,
say, I'm
but-
like, yo, man, just all that takes is just one.
no,
negligent-
it doesn't because my daughter doesn't know the Wi-Fi password.
Well, fair enough. I mean, that's fair. I mean, like,
So
yo,
she
man,
can't give it to anybody.
well, fair enough. Fair enough. I was about to say, but then they'll know it exists. That's the problem. Like, kids become like real. I don't know. I think everybody forgets they were a kid, and it's like kids are brilliant. They're like basically.
No, I
adults who are
don't. I
just
don't
like
mind her knowing that social media exists and all that other stuff. Just I don't want her being consumed by it.
I don't know, man. I'm really worried about TikTok. I think they're trying to like program the kids, man.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like my wife, who's a teacher, when she's doing virtual teaching, she's able to see what the kids are doing on their own computers that are school issue. And all those kids watch are the stupid ass challenges, man. That's what they watch.
I don't know, man. That's crazy that they even like capture that much attention. Cause like Vine, I'm like glad that Vine isn't around because like that was the closest thing to TikTok that I remember experiencing. And that really did
Yeah.
mess with my brain, man. Like I remember it was like very hard to concentrate on things. Like intensely hard. Where it was like if it was longer than 5 seconds, I was like, yo, man, why am I even like paying attention to this shit? Like I would watch no, like legitimately, like, and it got like it was intense where it was like one of those things where I was trying to watch a television show and it got to the point where I was like on Vine so often that the concept of me sitting down and like consuming like the full storyline like all at once of a television show, that sounded like that was like impossible to me. Like I remember
That's how everyone is now. I deliberately don't do that and because I see everyone doing that, like if I'm going to hang out at a friend's house and we watch a movie, I deliberately don't check my phone for the whole movie. But then usually with most people, they can't watch a movie without checking their phone.
Like that, that's the whole thing. The whole thing that like killed me was I knew that there was a time, and especially if you're like, I was born like at the end of the 80s. So like if you lived at any point in time and you just knew that there was a time where like, yo, like stories develop, and like when you were watching a television show, you like the concept of commercials fucks me up now. And like also
I can't stand commercials now. That's why I never watch cable TV anymore.
But the thing is like that used to just be the way it was, and we like not only did it, we were like sitting up there going like, yo man, this is fine, we'll take this in. And when I was on Vine, I was like, yo man, not only like the concept of just having a Netflix series that you could just literally no commercials, no nothing, just like you go all the way through it. The fact that like it was longer than 5 seconds, it really was. It was like a challenge. I was like, why is there so much talking going on? It should be done by now.
Shit.
It like
wow.
And that's what worried me about TikTok, because I'm like, TikTok, it's longer and it gives you longer to digest, but the things that it gives you to digest, it doesn't make any sense. And if you're a kid, you just kind of go like, I don't know, like somebody on the internet said some shit, so like I want to be accepted, so I guess that's the way the world works, whatever.
Yeah,
like
I have no plans. I have no plans to ever even go on TikTok. I really do not want to do that.
Well, if you do, it's like this weird, and it's upsetting because it's like, have you ever seen like those like pedophile sites, like the screenshots of them from like Onion from the Tor like browser that people will take and they'll like put on the internet? Like if you do,
I don't
it's like
think
weird.
so.
Well, okay, like they'll have like screenshots from like forums, and they're weird because they're like really colorful and everything, because they're designed to like, even though it's on Tor, it's designed to like get kids, so you can actually like make your fantasy come true. So like the way that TikTok is designed, it's kind of designed to be like, it's a lot of colors, it's like it's very flashy, it's very in your face to attract more children, but the content that it has on it is nonsense. So it's like kids will sit up there and they'll see that it's like it's adults, but like it's adults with like quotation marks around it, where it's like, yeah, these people are basically programming you, but like that's how the world works. And like because you're a kid, you're like, yeah, dude, like I'll watch like MTV or something like that. And MTV isn't the world, but if you're a teenager, it's the closest thing to the world that you can experience, because you can't go out, you can't drive anywhere, you can't whatever. You want to be prepped, so you just take in pop culture. And like I don't like what TikTok does as far as like trying to program kids into thinking what the world actually is.
Yeah, TikTok. I deliberately will never install that on any mobile device that I have.
Oh yeah, and it also like is one of the best advertising vehicles ever.
Problem.
And by advertising, I mean it takes all of your information and then it sells it to motherfuckers.
Yeah, the problem is like I don't have TikTok at all installed, but I see TikTok shit all the time.
Really?
That's right. That's
oh
right,
yeah,
because
you know what? I see like girls on Instagram advertising like trailers for their TikToks all the time. That's true.
That's right, because it's all integrated now. Like the whole thing is like everything is designed now, and that's what I don't like about what's happening, because TikTok spies on you. But now all social media platforms do this enticing thing where they're like, listen, even though this ain't TikTok, TikTok's so big you could be on it. Wouldn't that be great? And you're like, yo, no. If I wanted to be on TikTok, I would have downloaded that shit. Do the Facebooky and the Instagram-y shit that you do, and like leave it. But this is the problem. They've set a standard, so like now Instagram looks really similar to fucking TikTok.
Real TikTok-y.
Yeah, that's right. So it's like, and now it makes you wonder: are they going to start doing the same kind of surveillance-y kind of thing? And the answer is yes.
People just post like their TikToks on Instagram and on Facebook. There's like a Reels section where they short videos, and it's all TikTok reposts.
And I mean, like, why wouldn't you do that? I mean, people are like expanding their brands, and people are getting a lot of money from that. They really are. Like, you've got people that are like getting 5 million, like millions of followers on TikTok, and they're like, oh,
I don't
it's all I have
understand
to
it.
do is just like
Like,
lip sync.
yeah, it's like super
Yeah.
inane bullshit.
Yeah.
It's like we're getting closer to idiocracy. That's
Yeah.
Hey, I
that's what it
can't
looks
say
like to me.
anything. I can't say anything. I did like an awful lip syncy post. I did a couple
You
of them
did
on
one of
my
those?
Instagram. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did a couple of them, man, and that shit was fun. It makes you feel like you did something, even though it's like literally devoid of any creativity.
You know what? Like, is I found super hilarious. Are like behind the scenes of people who are like really into that TikTok shit
Yeah, it's
and
sad.
how the production values are so stupid. Like, man,
No,
you're going this far out of your way to make these fucking dumbass videos.
yeah.
Jesus.
Well, the thing about it is, it's like if you have time, and like this is one crazy thing about having a crazy level of opulence. You can tell where society's going based off of like what people want to do. And like there was a time where like kids wanted to grow up and they're like, I want to be a basketball star. I want to be an astronaut, or so I want to like they wanted they said some goofy shit like that. Now you got people going like, I want to be a YouTube star, and it's like, well, what does a YouTube star do?
want to be an Instagram influencer
Well,
when I grow
people
up.
people
That's
still
right.
wanted to be like movie stars and shit. It's to me, it's just like the newest version of
Well,
someone wanting to be a movie star.
the thing
Yeah.
about it is the thing about it is it's even less than that, because at least when you're a movie star, you have to like show up to a place and read some lines to somebody, right? You don't even have to like, you can be a piece of shit and be a YouTube star. All you got to do is just film yourself doing something, or like having an opinion. Like, honestly, I'm going to tell everybody right now, I'm not a good person. Like, honestly, you should look up everything that I say because it's probably kind of wrong. I'm an idiot. So like, I'm not going to sit up here and go like, yo, man, everybody should like listen to what I have to say every single, like, and to become a YouTube star and to like be really, really into it, you have to kind of believe that. Or I don't know. There's some like Ab and Preach. I'm a real big fan of them.
No
And there's a
wonder I have
couple
so
of
much
other-
trouble becoming a YouTube star.
No, well, I mean, like, no, well, I mean, like Ab and Preach. There's a couple of other people that are like really, really thoughtful and everything, and I could see why they have their brand, and they probably do have, and they're probably really, really genuine. And I'm just saying probably only because I don't know them in person, but I'm just saying from the outside looking in, they look like they take care of their brand quite well.
Right.
The problem is that when you basically are like a kid and you're on the outside, there's no way that you could possibly think that you have something to say. You just on the outset go like, I just want the notoriety, and it from the outside looking in, it doesn't seem like you even need to have that much ambition to do it. All you have to do is just kind of like film yourself just doing things. That's why like you have people that have like millions of viewers, but all they did was just like act a fool, like that Boonk Gang dude. Do you remember that guy? He was kind of big.
Who's that?
Boonk Gang. He's not known as Boonk Gang anymore, but like he was this dude that like used to just like pretend, because he couldn't have, because he would have been in jail. I mean, like he filmed himself basically committing crimes, but he was this dude that would be like, hey man, he would just do shit like, he'd be like, hey man, let me try on this new pair of shoes. And then, everybody would go, here's the new pair of shoes. Even though he's a man that has clear and present, like, tattoos on his face, like these really big, like aggressive tattoos on his face, like somebody that you would be like, dude, like you're gonna steal. Like I'm like,
Oh man, I just looked up a picture of the guy. Like,
yeah, exactly, dude. If you
what
look
the
him
fuck
up,
is his problem?
exactly. If you look him up, and if he walks into your shoe store and like just all you have to do is like pull up a picture of.
It'd be very difficult for me to not laugh.
Well, I know, but like I said, if you look up a picture of this dude, he looks like a dude that if you let him like wear some shoes, he would steal them, and then he proceeds to do exactly what you think he would do, and then like that's and then like he filmed it. Like I said, he filmed it, right? And then all he says is boom gang, a whole lot of gang shit. And then people go, talent. And then they go, I want to be that.
Wow.
It says
Yo,
he
like-
accidentally shot himself in the foot.
What? Wow.
Is that him or Plexico Burris?
It says Bunk Gang. It says Bunk Gang. His real name is John Robert Hill. Was initially popular on Vine thanks to his many prank videos. He initially went viral after stealing chicken from a local Popeyes, and he posted a number of extremely popular videos, following that one, including one in which he, in quotes, accidentally shot himself in the foot. So he probably didn't even, probably faked
No,
it.
like I said,
Imagine
all of it
imagine
has to
what
be like
imagine
come on,
what
like-
Roland would think of all this shit. He'd come into this world and say, "TikTok, you say? This is madness." It's like
In all
it
honesty-
reminds me of that thing where Milo Yiannopoulos supposedly declared that he's ex-gay now and supposedly threw his engagement ring to his black boyfriend into the sea, which he definitely did not actually do.
You know what? Like after that Joe Rogan episode with Milo, and he basically lost all of his shit. I don't know. Like that must have been intoxicating to be like that level of outrageous, because now it just seems like he's trying to recreate that. So shout out to Milo.
I don't know
shout
how.
out to
He's
your career,
not.
bro.
He's not triggering people though.
What do you mean? He's not what?
He's not really triggering people anymore.
Well, that's I know, because like because he was shown to be
He's
fragile.
trying to, isn't he like catering to the evangelicals with the whole like ex-gay because I found God now thing?
I don't
I
don't
guess.
know.
I don't know.
I was going to say I'm so far away from those communities. I don't know what goes on in the evangelical or the gay community.
I don't
Mainly because
either.
I'm not evangelical or gay. But like all I know is about MySpaces. But I mean, shout out to him, for doing what he's doing. Milo, like I liked your work when you were popular. It was kind of interesting seeing you trigger like big auditoriums full of people by just like, stating facts and like aggressively stating them and kind of doing it in like a semi-disingenuous way, which is proven by the fact that you like literally like completely changed your identity now. But I mean, like,
Exactly.
whatever. I mean, but shout out to you for trying to make that loop, bro.
Well, it's kind of like
no.
Candace Owens that way too. Like she became famous for calling out racism against her, and now she's like even more even more of a conservative than Trump is, because she's Candace Owens.
Oh, okay. Candace
She's
Owens.
She's queen grifter.
Well, this is, yeah, I don't know. I remember when I like looked at her, I was like,
She's
what?
hot.
That's not what I thought. I didn't think like let's
I
put it
think
this
she's
way.
hot.
Let's put it this way. Like I think not to toot my own horn, but I think like as a man, I look better than she does as a woman. So that right there, I was just kind of like, yeah, if I saw her on the street, I know I could like get her, so I didn't really care. But other than that, as far as like hotness went, like I would just say, well, as far as hotness went, I would just say what I just said. But as far as her outlook on things, I remember thinking that she wasn't as genuine as she was trying to put out. And I remember there were a couple of answers that she gave on the Joe Rogan podcast that made me think that. Like when she gave, like immediately after she gave those answers, I was like, I don't know why, but like that weird feeling that you get deep within your gut when like somebody's lying to you.
It's
Yeah.
called Griftard.
Well,
Yeah.
well, whatever it is. But she hit it, and I remember like she gave an answer, and she was like, yeah, like it's too far down the line, and like as a black person, there's certain things that it's like, look, man, you can be conservative only to a certain point, and like really have it be like genuinely black, like so it's like for you to say that you don't understand why people like feel the certain way that they do, or like feel like there's a chip on their shoulder and that people can pander to that, and can take advantage of that, that's being disingenuous as far as like I'm concerned. Because my thing is I'm like, I might not agree with the Democratic narrative, but my thought about it is that like I can get why people would. So if you sit up there and you're aggressively against it and you go like, I can't even understand why anybody would ever think, I'd be like, listen, yo, man, like have you been black for a little while? Like I understand why you feel that way. Like I don't agree with the logic that you did to get there, but at the same time, like I get it.
It's the
I'm just
same.
saying.
It's the same thing as like people who cannot possibly fathom why someone voted for Trump. Like you don't have to be a fan of Trump in any way whatsoever to understand that there are valid reasons for why people chose to vote for him. He didn't fulfill the goals that he said he was going to for those people, but they were rightfully disillusioned for the way a lot of stuff has been working out due to their political leaders. And they had reasons to be upset about that for sure.
No, that's completely true. I mean, I completely agree with that. The thing about it is I think we have a lot of division because a lot of people don't have the understanding, and we act like there's no way that you could ever possibly fathom why somebody would go against your point of view. Like my thing is usually if you really came at it, and this has been studied, like people have talked about this, and it's not like we haven't had conversations, but conversations that are usually fruitful start with, I'll acquiesce that you might be right about this point. This was my point. Now, can you see a little bit of my point now that I've acquiesced to some of your point? And then if you've got a reasonable person, they'll go, all right, I'm not saying I agree with all of what you said, but I could definitely see a little bit of what you said because you gave me that goodwill. Candace Owens, because she's a grifter, like she doesn't do any of that. She goes, and the only reason they want to do that is because they're like, it comes down to evil or it comes down to you're a socialist, which I was like, okay, like even if you are a socialist,
Evil or
like
conspiracy or
yeah,
some
that's
other nonsense.
correct. Or
Yeah.
you're a George Soros,
She loves sniffing her own farts.
Yeah.
Yeah, she does.
Well, no, like she just likes talking, and then like I
That's
said,
Coleman Hughes' assessment of her. She seems like a person who enjoys smelling her own farts.
well, like basically, she's like the Joy Reid of the right. So there you go.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah, I don't even
basically
know
everything.
much about Joy Reid.
Joy Reid basically breaks everything down to white supremacy. So it's like if she's late in traffic, it's white supremacy. If she stubs her toe, it was because those dirty white people made too many right angles on their furniture. If
she sounds she sounds like Odetta.
No, I mean basically like it's kind of like
damn
that.
honky made me late for work.
And then Candace Owens is like, if anything bad happens, it's like it's because of the liberal narrative, and it's because everybody's trying to convince you that you're like, less than. And I was like, well, maybe some things just actually just suck, and people are trying to bring attention to it.
Yeah.
Like remember in her book, Dusty, in her book Blackout, where she was basically blaming all of slavery on only the Democrats.
Yeah, it's so stupid, man. She's like, oh, the Democrats, they're the ones who are the enslavers. It's like, no, it's the fucking South. And what is the South now? It's like it's all regional. Like the politics are regional for the most part. Like they switch names all the goddamn time, but usually where it's at is they voted like that for years and years.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Candace, man. I remember I was like when she was on Reuben and what's her face? Like the trans.
Oh, Blair White. Yeah.
Blair White.
Yeah,
that was when man, when she came out and she was like, the very first thing that came out of her mouth was, yo, man. It was like, I just wanted everybody to know, my entire fan base, that I acknowledge that I am talking to a man. And I was like, this is one of those things where like, have you ever been in a relationship, and then like the chick comes out and she says some shit that you're like, yo, I know we're gonna fucking argue. Like where it goes like, hey, what like where like a question's just posed to you where it goes like, what did I tell you about the bread and leaving it open? And you go like, oh, she's gonna fucking try to bitch me out. So like that was the whole that was the whole way that whole thing fucking started. And I remember I was like, yo, Candace, why even set up the air like that? And this is when I realized that I like Blair White and I kind of dislike Candace Owens, because Blair White just kind of went like, and this is how you know she's trans, because she just ate it. She just went, you know what? Not even worth my time like that. And I was like, there we go.
Yeah, it was the whole episode was actually Blair White trying to expose Candace as a grifter.
And it's so stupid too, because Blair White is a trans person who is not into any of the wokeness at all. Like if there were any trans person who, even from a grifter perspective, that Candace Owens could ally with so she could get brownie points as being a tolerable conservative, that would have made sense, because she's not into, Blair White isn't into the woke shit at all.
Well, see, this is
Blair White knew like Candace's background before she started popping up in conservative circles. Like I knew about Candace too. I was like, what the fuck is popping up here as the conservatives? Like, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
Well, she basically did a Tommy Loren, and the problem with Candace Owens is the fact that like because she doesn't believe what she is saying at all, like they don't have a measure. So like you said, like as far as what you just said, Andrew, you're like, she could have gotten with Blair White if she actually had something genuine to say. The problem is that she doesn't believe anything that she says. So she just goes, here's a laundry list of things that I can just read out. And if I read out these talking points, then I'll get money. And then she's gotten away with it because like if you actually just listen to any of her speeches, they can literally be copied and pasted. And she just does the same thing over and over and over again. You don't have to even believe in it. All you have to do is just say it. And if you keep on saying it, people will keep on giving you money because you know, like there's somebody that goes, you see, we've got one of these people from this group that everybody says doesn't agree with us and now agrees with us. So, you know, I'll just read off that same good shit that you read off before that you don't believe in, but you'll get a bunch of people to go along with you.
So we can have someone who says, listen, I'm a black woman. Trust me, Democrats are evil.
Basically, they wanted to get the Democrat. They wanted to get a Democrat section, and this is the best time to do it because you can split. There's a lot of betrayal that's happened on the Democrat side. So now you could, if you wanted to, you can implant somebody, and you could do something like a Blexit. That, don't get me wrong, I'm like, it's cool that it happened, but I would like it if it was more genuine, because it's like anything else that isn't genuine. Things that aren't genuine, they just crumble. So I don't know when Blexit's going to crumble, but the fact that it has a disingenuous leader means that it most definitely will. But that's what happens with any kind of movement. Like, I mean, BLM is starting to crumble too because they had disingenuous leaders. And they had disingenuous leaders that were exposed as, you know, taking money and using it for, you know, personal gain. There's all kinds of times where it's been exposed that's happened. And Candace Owens, because like I said, she doesn't have a measured way of doing any of it. She's going to at one point in time or another, like, overplay her hand, and she's going to piss somebody off, and people are going to go like, okay, now it's time to expose you, because it happens to everybody. If they could take down Cosby with that shit, they can take down anybody.
Yeah, one thing I was going to say about Candace, I literally remember her being on a podcast or an interview or something where she literally said that she writes stuff on index cards and basically every night she goes and tries to memorize it. I was like, yeah, that's what a talking point machine does. Like,
yeah, no shit. Wow.
I was like, I wish I could find that interview, but this was like,
well, it's just kind of like Tommy Loren. Tommy Loren in her heart isn't as conservative as she says she is, and that was the reason why she got kicked off of Blaze TV and all that other stuff, because she eventually when push came to shove, like it got exposed that she wasn't what she said she was, but she was really good at reading off note cards really fast, which is all she does now. So it's cool. And she fits the bill of what you would call the like typical conservative.
Right.
Yeah.
What about Dave Rubin though? Is he is he with Ben Shapiro's thing now, or is he with Glenn Beck's thing?
He's with Glenn Beck.
Rubin.
He's on the Blaze TV.
How does Glenn Beck not know that Dave Rubin is a grifter?
The weird thing is like Glenn Beck is weirdly principled. Like
He is. I agree. Yeah.
Do you mean by being crazy?
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Both.
You gotta
both.
He was crazy. I don't know if he still is.
You don't.
He's had his come to Jesus moment about how stupid he was in the past
about being on pills.
That's what everybody said. Hold on. That's what
he
had
an addiction too, so he talked about that shit as well.
He still makes outrage content though, like he criticized people for doing. That's true.
I was about to say, I'm like, a leopard doesn't change his spots because that's what he made money off of. And on top of that, like, he's way too into himself. For instance,
he's pretty smart though. Like one of the things about him is, I'll say about Glenn Beck, at least he knows history. Like he actually knows history, unlike Candace Owens, who thinks she does.
Well, Candace Owens is a flat out grifter. I'm like, don't get me wrong. I believe that Glenn Beck is smart in a certain way, but he's fucking crazy, man. Like, there's a thin line between genius and insanity. Maybe teeters.
Oh yeah, I know he's crazy. Man. Like, he's not as crazy as he used to be, though.
Well, let's put it this way. I always think he's 2 seconds away from going.
Well, here's the thing. As soon as Trump came along, he became anti-Trump. Like, he did not go along with the Trump way.
That's true.
Well, the only
but dude, like watch his podcast too, though. Like I don't watch it very often, partially because I am kind of I'd say I'm kind of critical of him too. Like if I want to get a conservative point of view, I'd prefer like, you know, the ones we've talked about before, someone like Glenn Lowry or Thomas Sowell.
Or Coleman Hughes-ish. He's like a moderate.
Coleman Hughes is just he's too young to be on to really decide what he's going to do. But I think he's going to land on conservative, and I think he's going to land hard when he does. But yeah, but the fact that he's so neutral, that's a youth thing.
I'm fairly neutral.
Youth to be neutral.
Yeah, that as neutral
so old
as he
people
is.
aren't neutral.
Old people, as you get this is the thing. What I've noticed is like life pushes you in one way or the other. Just because you become jaded in one way or the other. And you just kind of like go, like some people start going like, well, people are always trying to take my money. And then that's like when like the conservative thing happens. If like you get to like the success thing, and if like you don't get as much, then like life is so hard and we should get more help. And then like you get kind of like this like liberal.
Well, why is Rogan flip-flopping all the time then?
Yeah, that's true.
Rogan always flip-flopping.
Sometimes he goes through periods where he seems like he's getting more right-wingish, and then sometimes he seems like he's going through periods when he's getting like way more left-wingish.
Who, Coleman?
No, Joe Rogan.
Oh, Joe Rogan. Yeah, no, Joe Rogan is classically left. He's left, but he's like got right bits, mainly because of the talking points. But I think he's like on the Bill Maher level, because Bill Maher is very left-wing, but he's like genuine. So he's like, if we get down to the bottom of it, like a lot of things that happen don't make sense.
That sounds like kind of classical liberal-ish in that way.
It's like boomer liberal.
Yeah.
Correct. That's an old school classic liberal. I mean, I think that both Bill Maher and Joe Rogan fall under that because they sound conservative now, because like literally being like super left-wing now means you're absolutely insane. Like, I mean,
same if you're super right wing.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you just don't see it as much. Like, if somebody comes out doing super right wing stuff, which is like satanic panic or something that has more of a religious bent,
or like QAnon shaman.
Well, I mean, QAnon, they're around, but like that's almost universally mocked. if you are a left wing, like,
Well, it's fringe. That's why it's so crazy. So like
well,
the
Or
fringe
like
left wing stuff is
January
fucking
6th.
crazy too.
well,
January
those
6th was
things, but
correct.
like I said, those are even to an extent that's probably even overly like put
Well,
out
there's
there.
a lot of people who's like Trump still won.
I
A
mean, there are
significant
people that
amount
say
of
that. I
people.
mean, but what I'm trying to say is that's automatically thought of as being bad. If you look at left wing extremism, there's like, isn't that bad? Like, you know, if you look at, for instance, when we had the riots that were happening
Yeah.
for BLM, everybody was like, is it really that bad? I mean, like, it's for justice. I mean, a lot of stuff's getting burned down, but is it that bad? And I mean, that was like throughout a whole summer. January 6th
Well, it
happened
depends
like
on what
over
you're
one day.
watching. Like, I don't watch MSNBC at all. But most,
You do know Parker, right? Because isn't that where Joy Reid is, or is that she CNN?
MSNBC is where Joy Reid's at. I look at
Okay.
CNN and MSNBC from time to time but that's just to kind of get us an opposite perspective. I just do like independent stuff. If I want something to honestly be kind of towards the truth, I go with Forbes. Business magazines, they're just like, they're super in the middle. They're like, it just is what it is. We don't have any bent. This is just, it is. It's like, and this is where your money should go because of the way things are going. And that's all they care about. They're like, yo, listen, I don't know what your political affiliation, but if you want to make money, this is how shit's going, bro. And that's what I like. I mean, like Forbes is, I mean, you can't even say, like, every time I read it, I'm like, you can't say that it's on any side. They'll just kind of go like events. Like, they'd be like, yeah, there was a BLM protest and there were some rioters there. All right, next thing. And I'm like,
yeah.
damn, they don't tell you. They don't tell you what to think about it.
I like to just mostly watch podcasts and commentators of people across the different political spectrum, like left-wing people, right-wing people, and libertarian people, and see their different interpretations of the same events.
I used to listen to NPR and Pod Save America, but those were both those
are way too mainstream, weird, man. Those are not independent.
I was about to say,
especially Pod Save America.
I was like, Pod Save America started getting like, yo, man, what the fuck y'all trying to do, yo?
I have not listened to Pod Save America, but it's always being recommended.
That's because it's a mainstream one, so it's like propped up by the algorithm.
It's propped up, and it's, in all honesty, it's not really that good. It just isn't. Like, every time you see it, you're like, I know what you're trying to do, and like, I don't know why you're being this aggressive about it, but I know what you're trying to do.
Yeah, the only news podcasts I listen to, and I don't do well. Yeah, I guess I do religiously, is the New York Times one. Well, that's about it. Because if I just want to get like the most important news story of the day, at least they'll cover it and they'll try to talk to both sides about it. If it's like a political deal.
The New York Times hasn't been the same for a while, man. Not since Barry Weiss left.
Barry Weiss is an idiot, though.
Oh, snap. Shots fired. Why is Barry Weiss?
I never liked Barry. I hate people who say, if you criticize the state of Israel, anybody that says, if you criticize the state of Israel, you're an anti-Semite. Anybody who says that shit is an idiot. And that's Barry Weiss.
Yo, I think it's because you just don't like Jews, bro.
I'm not a Jew or anything. I'm just saying, like, you can criticize what a country is doing. That doesn't make you like an enemy to the Jewish race.
Are you sure about that, dude? Are you sure? Bro, I've been reading a lot of stuff about like Israel and like, dude, are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure you could say Netanyahu was a bad person and not be an anti-Semite.
Dude, honestly, Netanyahu, even though there's like mad corruption going on, like even though he's been like literally almost like on a dictatorial level that's on the level of like Xi Jinping or Putin, even though that's been happening, bro. Dude, why are you saying this? Are you like an anti-Semite, bro?
No, I just hate that angle. And it's funny too because usually
You
those
must be
people
hired by the FBI.
No, what I
must
want
be
to
an
say is that
FBI
those
agent.
people tend to be, when they take that angle, that's like the massive hypocrite angle because they criticize the opposite side for doing the same shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like for instance, they'll be all about, identity politics, yada yada yada, and then as soon as someone criticizes like Israel Palestine, they call them an anti-Semite.
You know why?
Yeah,
They
that's
control
true.
the banking system, bro.
It's like how if you say anything favorable about Russia, then you're a Russian agent or something like that. Or if you don't believe Russiagate, then you're a Russian agent.
Yeah, like you mean like Chang?
I don't
Yeah.
know.
But even then, Aaron, like I know that there's a whole feud and shit with Jimmy Dore and Cenk Uygur, but to be honest,
And Aaron Mate.
fucking Jimmy Dore turned into a grifter now.
Yeah, I don't
He
like
is
him as
not
much as I
grifting.
used to. He's all most of the vast majority of what he does now is anti-vax stuff. And I don't have a problem with people being vaccine hesitant. Parker's vaccine hesitant, but like
No, man,
it
don't
doesn't.
put my name out there associated with that shit.
You and I talked about this before.
Well,
You and I
that
talked
was
about this.
then. This is now, man. They're trying to mandate that shit. You're trying to fuck with my future by doing this, man. You better calm this shit down. As a matter of fact, political
FBI, if you're
overlords
watching
listening to
this, go after Parker, okay?
No, honestly, like all of the COVID overlords that are trying to reset this shit, man. I've been super poked up, bro. Like as far as you know, and that's the way
Yeah.
it stays. So like don't mess with my life and track me and shit just because this dude that don't even live in the United States.
Yeah.
That's some Canadian shit. Trudeau, get this man. He's get your boy and do it in blackface, so it's funny. Just imagine.
It's not Trudeau anymore, is it? Somebody else?
No,
What's up?
Trudeau's still the prime minister. Trudeau's still the prime minister.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, he's still
It's
around.
pretty much like there's a lot there, like the policy in terms of COVID and stuff, and how much the degree to which people are choosing to adhere to it varies widely from province to province. Like in my province, where we have super conservative leaders, so there is way less authoritarian COVID stuff going on than there is in, like, especially BC, where my brother is, where it's like basically the Canadian LA, where all the actors and that whole culture is, where it's the complete opposite over there.
Oh, wait a sec. Oh, you mean in British Columbia?
Yeah.
Everybody's out there just putting the face condom on?
Yeah.
Oh,
British Columbia.
Face condom.
Yeah.
That's right. That's what the mask is, man. You got that face condom on. You got a raw dog your air, bro. You gotta fuck that air with no condom, bro. You gotta just raw dog that shit, man. Like what's gonna happen? Just get a little COVID in your face, get a little sun on you. Yo, man, it's whatever, man. The other day a dude coughed in my face. It pissed me off, but we didn't fight about it, man. It was fine, man.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, like it's crazy how much against it people can get. Like I think I told you before, Dusty, about how like even though I've been vaccinated, my dad's been vaccinated. He got super mad. He didn't get mad to his face, but he got really pissed off about this guy who wasn't wearing a mask in the grocery store. And I just figured, well, stay away from the guy. And he felt like he was angry and felt like he wanted to punch him. I just thought like I would never have, like, he would never actually do that because he's not a violent person for the most part, but he's I don't even understand having that thought go into my head.
It's
I guess
the
maybe it's just like usually those guys, like, I don't know. That's just
well, there's a certain personality type that just gets activated by certain times like this, because they'll be like, there's certain people that are like, hey, I want everybody to be safe, and I'm like, you're making me less safe, you're making the community less safe, and like, why are you being so selfish about it? Where there's other people that are like, yo, man, like, I got vaccinated, live your life, bro. Like, the whole reason why you got vaccinated was so you didn't have to wear a mask, right? So it's like you have a myriad of people, but there's always going to be like a portion of the population that gets activated. That's why like WebMD is awful, because there's some people that will look at the like least aggressive diagnosis and they'll go like, yeah, dude, that's probably what it is. That's reasonable. Like, I haven't even done anything that's that bad. And then those other people will be like, my slight cough, I got to go to the doctor. It's definitely cancer. So, like,
every symptom is cancer in WebMD, like, ultimately.
Yeah.
Right. And the thing, well, that's the thing. I mean, and like, that's why people go like, oh, I always think that I'm cancer. And I was like, that's weird, because I looked at it and I was like, I never thought that I was like the most severe thing that they put on there, but that's just not my personality type. I wouldn't just do that. I would just be like, and even if it is, I'll just fucking deal with it. And that's just the end of that. And there's some people that have that attitude, and there's other people that are just hyper vigilant, and they'll be like, but it could happen, and it's the worst thing, and that's like the worst thing. And they're like always looking out for that, which is cool, because like, if you have a society, you need both parties. Because like, I might be like so lax with what I do that like I don't give a shit, and then like I do something that's faulty, whereas there's somebody that's hyper vigilant that's like, listen, man, I know that you go out there and you like raw dog the air with no condom, but you need to know that there's shit that's gonna happen or could happen. And then I was like, it's cool, like, you take care of what could happen, and then I'll listen to the shit because you care about that, but I'm gonna go off and do whatever until then. But like, I'll come back and you have the information, like, yeah, I'm looking into it right now. And then they like do all that shit, and you're like, it's cool. If we can work together, we both find out some stuff. But like I said, there's always going to be that person that's going to be activated by the news, and they're going to think that they're like the crusader. That's why they always say the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Well, listen to this. We just got a new governor in my state of Virginia, and
Junkie.
Yeah, he made an executive order to ban mask mandates in school. Apparently, he doesn't legally have that authority, so all the schools in my area are requiring it. So there's this one lady who went to some town hall recently, and she's like, I'm bringing my kid to school maskless, and you're going to let them in, and I'm also bringing my guns loaded. And right after she said that, yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. And right after that, like, the moderator's like, your time's up. And then, she got, I think the FBI followed up with her. And it's like, damn.
Yeah, if you're threatening to shoot people.
over having her kid wear a mask at school.
You see how they're trying to shut it down? They're trying to shut down the big dick energy. You get just for saying you got it. Just for saying you got your Second Amendment rights, people try to say that you're fucking up, and the FBI's got to look after you just because you threatened a few people. Back in my day, and listen, black for 33 years, like I said, haven't missed a day.
You just want to be you just want to be in Roland's world where you can go, you fucking suck, bro. I'm shooting you.
In all honesty, yo, man, like, I like the fact that I dig the fact that they made that an option. Like, legitimately, when the forefathers came up with, like, all of the Bill of Rights and everything, they put that second one, and it's like, yo, man, we're gonna make these meetings fucking interesting. You got the right to bear arms, bro.
Yeah, and then Junkie also mandated that schools can't teach CRT, which they're not teaching anyway.
That's stupid. They don't even like, how do they actually define CRT that way? They probably
idea.
They probably define it as like anyone that hurts people's feels.
Yeah. If you make people feel bad about their race, like, well, how do you teach slavery without making people feel bad?
Listen, the Civil War, everyone was good on all sides, okay? Everyone had a good point in the Civil War. Okay?
Oh, so you gotta trump it.
Yeah.
There were good people on all sides.
Well, this is the thing. I think what people get upset about is maybe the framing of how everything's being said. So, like, for instance, it's okay to say that factually, like, slavery happened and that slavery itself was bad, but maybe the fact that, I don't know, maybe under the framing of that, they're saying that the people that actually did the enslaving, just in the fact that enslaving happened, that they're just bad people, and that like propagates due to the fact that you might be white. I think that people are worried about that, or the fact that you might feel like you're less than because you were an enslaved class. And I think people are afraid of that. But if framing that in a certain way, I don't know if anybody like has the right to put a moral compass on an action when we can all just kind of like put the moral compass within our own selves on how we feel about that action. Because slavery is just, it's biblical. Literally everybody's done it. I mean, Egyptians
of
did it
course.
to Jews. I mean, so I'm like, when you talk about slavery and you put it in a certain framing or whatever, yeah, people feel a certain way, but then it also like indoctrinates you to get into a class system, which people like will say might be, I guess, similar to Marxism due to the fact that you have a good class and a bad class.
This is interesting too, though, because like I don't think there's anything Marxist about that, especially because like Dusty and I've talked about this before about how that like if you replace oppression with different categories, that's how people like James Lindsay, who I criticize a lot, connect critical race theory to Marxism, even though critical race theorists never talked about class and Marxists don't talk about race. And even some critical race theorists disagree with each other about incrementalism or radicalism. And Derek Bell, who you and I have talked before about, Dusty, is one of the critical race theorists who he wrote an interesting book that I'm probably going to do a video series on. It's called, no, wait, it's not Faces at the Bottom of the Well. Oh shit, I'm forgetting what it's called off the top of my head, but it's basically about black school desegregation, the law that ended black school desegregation in the 1950s, and how it was a mistake to do that because of the way it was done. And it was done as if just changing the law will change the whole way the structure of the system is organized, and as if like, you know, putting black kids in with white kids is going to solve these funding problems of there being less funding to black schools, and maybe you should emphasize the separate but equal clause instead of just pretending that combining white people and black people will solve these class issues that are related to the race issues. So yeah, it's really complex.
It's complex, but at the same time, it's kind of straightforward too. Because the thing about it is we can say that there's something that's just bad, or you might have had a certain outcome that you wanted, and it missed the mark. So, the thing about it is, I think even when somebody's being prejudiced, I look at people that do things that are outwardly prejudiced, and I look at the reason why they might do it, because nobody does things to be bad, right? So even if you look at somebody that's like a George Wallace, like, because when I look at George Wallace, I was like, awful, right? But then it's like, if we look at it from a different point of view, it's like, well, segregation now, segregation forever, and now we're literally talking about how segregation might have been for the best. So did he see something that we didn't fucking see in doing that?
Well, that's another complexity about what Derek Bell talks about too, though, because some people misinterpret him as saying that black school desegregation was a mistake because of the way it was done, as him sounding like basically a black supremacist like Malcolm X in his early days, talking making pro-segregation points, where in reality he thinks that, you know, it's a good morally thing to do, but it didn't solve the problems that it was trying to solve, which is more of a conservative angle on it, really, like something like Thomas Sowell would say and has said many times before.
Yeah, it's like, it's a good measure to do, but it didn't change anything functionally. Like if you're going to public school, you got to go to the school that's closest to you. And if
Yeah.
the school that's closest to you is funded by the property values in your neighborhood, and you live in a shitty neighborhood, then your school is going to be shitty. And it's
Mhm.
not actually easy to get. If you don't want to go to your shitty public school, you got to pay for private school. And you know, how is that feasible for someone who lives in a shitty, rundown neighborhood to pay for? It's not. So I think the main thing is I totally understand what when Derek Bell says separate but equal should have been prioritized. I think that's the case because really you do need to make sure that public schools should be funded and equally in order to lift. It's the public school. You know, you're supposed to make sure that all of these schools have at least the same standards, at least the same, you know, quality of faculty. But that's just not the case in our country. It's if you live in a shitty neighborhood, you're going to have a shitty school, shitty faculty, and there's no way around that unless you have the means to live in a nicer neighborhood or the means to send your kid to a private school. Because if you live in a nice enough neighborhood, a public school is completely sufficient path to college. You know, you can still go to private school if you want that little extra edge, but hey, you know, you don't really need to, as long as you do really well and your school's decent and they have a high college enrollment rate, then you're fine. And there's many public schools like that. It's just when you get down to the really bad neighborhoods, the resources aren't there. And it's a really nuanced argument that I think Derek Bell is trying to make. But you know, you know how some people are. They take one little thing, they misconstrue it, and you know, make it fit a preconceived narrative or bias that they already have. You know,
Yeah.
basically like James Lindsay and all those other people.
That's what public intellectuals are notorious for. That's one thing I first learned from mixed mental arts was Sam Harris, really. And I've found the errors of other public intellectuals since then, like Jordan Peterson and James Lindsay and others as well. But, you know, I don't hate any of these people either. Some people have gone too far, and, you know, like saying that Sam Harris is a racist for defending Charles Murray or something like that, like he actually has some white supremacist agenda, or, you know, saying the same sort of thing about James Lindsay or Jordan Peterson. Really, I've heard people make those criticisms before.
Yeah, we live in a hyperbolic time where a lot of people just will say something hyperbolic about anybody because they just disagree with them. So, and I mean, we've been kind of conditioned to do that because everything gets eyes when it's over the top.
Yeah, because Hunter went through that phase. Remember when he was hyperbolic on Twitter? Just started defending a shitload of like anarcho-capitalists and libertarians for the sake of getting attention.
Well, it's like if it's not sexy to go, well, let's have an even-handed, measured, like, look at this. You have to be aggressive about something, and then when you have that aggression, like, being aggressively neutral isn't really sexy either. Going like, oh, everybody has a point. Yeah. And like, you know what I'm saying?
That's like you know, there's a South Park episode in which there was a kid who got adopted into a militant agnostic household, and one of the things that they did was they only drank Dr. Pepper because it's so many different flavors you don't know what the flavor is.
Yeah, like I said, it's like and that's ridiculous. Going like I'm ridiculously neutral, because the thing about it is you're gonna lean one way or the other. So you decide which way you want to lean, and then you just lean into it. And then if you want to get some attention, you lean into it extremely hard, and you do things. And I mean, James Lindsay, he does have a point with what he says, because I mean, he was part of that whole debacle. And based off of his reasoning, okay, he was able to get those papers published within those journals. So he
There's
does have a
some
point.
caveat though with that.
We only Dusty, because I sent him this podcast. Both of us only found out relatively recently that the majority of the papers that they submitted did not get accepted, and some of them ended up getting retracted too. I didn't know that detail.
And a lot of the early papers were paid to publish, so they weren't
I
even
didn't know
peer
that
reviewed.
either.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, fair enough. Let's put it this way: there's always
They did have a point with that, though, for sure. Like,
oh yeah,
like,
definitely.
like rape culture in dog parks or some shit like that. Like, that's obviously ridiculous.
So I'm like, the thing about it is I'm like, if you believe in it or not, I look at things as information, and I'm not going to sit there and take away anything. I'll say things are kind of ridiculous if I see a direct hypocritical kind of thing where it's like literally due to your own logic, you destroyed your own argument, which I mean, there's a lot of that going around too. I haven't done that with James Lindsay yet, but
the thing that Dusty pointed out to me about that, which I always think about now, is that James Lindsay is all for free speech, and on his most recent Joe Rogan podcast that I saw him doing the other day, he talked about how he's pro free speech, even in the terms of Trump election fraud claims, but he wants CRT to be banned. That's definitely a major contradiction there.
Like I said, I think the framing is more what people, because like I said, I think it's like the same issue that was brought up with Common Core math like a couple years ago when Obama tried to put it, like implement that nationally. It's Common Core math at its core looked like it was just trying to teach you math in a different way. But in all honesty,
know what's funny about Common Core math is that's actually how I do math in my head.
Fair enough.
Is it?
But the problem about that was it's like when it was the way it was graded, because what you would do with Common Core math is if you gave an answer, it had to be done in a certain particular way, and you couldn't deviate from it. And there were a lot of different examples, and maybe it was just overzealous teachers, but there was a lot of the teach the way you think about math, which I'm like, I don't mind you teaching math, but like if you get the right answer, like why does it matter how you thought about it? As long as you showed how you thought about it in your head, like you just wrote it down. But they were like, it's just not right. Like I think they had like a 5 times 2, and the kid wrote down 2 like plus 2 like 5 times.
Plus 2,
they were
plus
like
2,
because
plus
it's
2,
yeah, and then it was like, no, we put 5 times 2, so it was supposed to be 5 plus 5 because that's the way Common Core told you to. And I was like, that's
same shit.
Yeah,
I know 5 plus 5 would be the easier route to go, but I get it.
Well, but that was the problem, because there started being a string of like ways that teachers were grading.
To be honest, that makes sense. Like, because if you say that is the way to go, I understand the way they're talking. Because what if you do 5 times 100? What are you gonna do? Write 100 2s and then add them together, or are you gonna do 100 plus 100? 2 times 100.
You could think of it that way, or you could just go like, whatever, it's not efficient, but you'll figure it out. I mean,
yeah, but the bigger the number against 2, the more unfeasible it becomes to use that method.
Once again, the kid could also figure it out, or he could be like going back and forth between the two. But I mean, like if you get the right answer, then
I guess, yeah.
I mean that my whole thing is I'm like, listen, I don't care how you do it, as long as like if you were doing that as far as making a wheel or something, and you came up with the right answer and you did it in a different order, I don't care, as long as the answer was right.
Yeah, I guess they're trying to shape the thought process instead of having kids
that's right.
come up
I'm
with
like,
answers.
Why not have a more agile mind where it's like, yeah, like you said, it would be less accurate, but or it would be less. I'm not saying it would be less accurate. It would take more time, but you have that option. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I get it. I was like, man, I know this sounds dumb, but this is exactly how I do math in my head. I don't have to write it. I don't have to write it down. do like long division and shit. I just can't do this weird method.
Well, I don't care as long as you get the right answer. That's the way I am. I'm like, listen. I was like, listen. Even if you just went like, yo, I put it into a black box and then it spat something. I was like, God damn, that's a crazy black box you got. Boom. I don't care if the answer is right. Cool. And neither does life, which is like why I think it's weird.
I don't think that,
that's
like,
true.
I think it depends on what we're talking about in terms of whether the answer needs to be
it
right.
depends
Though,
on what you're
like,
doing.
if we're just having a conversation right now, does it matter if I say 2 + 2 = 5? I don't really think so.
No, not really. I guess it depends. Like, if you're a programmer,
It
doing
doesn't
the
matter if
2
it is
+ 2 +
5.
2 + 2 way versus the 2 times 5, like 5 + 5 way, there's a major difference between that. Like, if you are a programmer, because you're using resources up more for that longer way rather than the other way. Because if you do one way with it's just 2 5s, it's just 2 operations. I know it's like a blink of an eye of a CPU clock, but if you're doing a lot of that shit, it can bog down your program.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean and it also depends on like how you're aggregating and how you're allocating like the different resources that you're using. That's like I mean I guess you
I'm
can kind
saying
of
that
look
would be
that way.
useful at that level, but not useful. It doesn't really matter when you're like
Fundamentally
talking
learning.
at a podcast or just talking. You're a cashier. It doesn't fucking matter.
Exactly.
like
I
if
was
you
about to say, I'm like, when
like
you get granular like that, then we can just have a conversation, which if you're the programming, which you already know, you talk about everything that you do. So you go like, yeah, I implemented it this way. And then there's probably some other program that goes like,
yeah.
that takes up a lot of resources. So just don't. And then you
Yeah.
just change it.
Like if you go to the grocery store and you want to buy 5 apples, you have to know what the correct answer is to what is 2 + 2.
Maybe they're trying to
But if
these
someone
kids
asks you
programmers.
like, hey, how many books did you read last week, and you say, I don't know, 5 or so, and that actually means 3 because you don't realize or you feel like you want to seem smarter because you read 5 books instead of 3. I don't think the truth matters in that scenario of whether it's right or wrong.
No, I mean,
I don't know I have no idea like what the core idea of what they were really trying to do by this guided thinking of how to put answers together in math. Like,
I didn't even
obviously you
know
can't
about all of
earn.
that. I had heard Common
That's an
Core before,
American
but
thing, I think. I don't know if they're doing that in
Yeah.
Canada.
it is. I mean, we have maybe something similar to what you described, but if it is the same thing, it's not called that.
Yeah, because I know Comic Core math used to be like a big Facebook meme like a few years ago. Nobody's really talking about it anymore.
yeah, because it basically got flamed, man. Everybody roasted the concept of it so bad that nobody even wanted to talk about it anymore.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, like seriously, like even now when you talk about it, I mean, nobody has a favorable thing where they're like, yeah, man, and went on that Common Core math program and it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. Like I understand math a lot better now. Like
I
there's
think
literally nobody saying that.
yeah, Comic Core might be making some aspects of it too complex and convoluted. Like, yeah, it's just not really that
I mean,
necessary unless you're trying
if
to
I'm
train someone to
if
be an
I'm
engineer or something.
if I'm tutoring a kid in math, whether I use like a more simple or more complex method will depend on how well they understand a question. Like I've tutored kids in math before a few times, and like the more simple the math is and the worse their understanding is of it, the more it helps to actually kind of break it down into more steps and make it more complex so they can see all the different steps of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's like always different approaches too. Like, I know if you're trying to teach somebody something and one approach doesn't work, there's no problem teaching them a different approach and they get it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of what I would basically take umbrance with. It's like they're trying to funnel this and only taking it in a single approach, but you can't innovate if you're making people all go the same route. You gotta kind of let that diversity come in and have people figure out these problems in a different multitude of ways.
Exactly. And that was my problem, because your mind has to be agile if you want to actually solve any problems. Because it's like, okay, sure, it wasn't the most accurate way, it wasn't the fastest way, but you had the option. And then it's like, and listen, you also had this option. And then they'll be like, oh, well, now that I see the other option, that was faster. But like, why would you truncate the experience that a kid has when you just want an agile mind that can think about things? Because I mean, you and I both have an understanding of the concept of math. So it's like, okay, like the 5 + 5, that is faster. I only have to write 2 5s. That's just, my hand doesn't cramp up. That's cool. But if you're a kid, you're like, you're just excited because you're learning. So why would you stop a kid from learning and say, this is the way to learn? Because then that's when, like,
Yeah,
a lot
of
of people say,
course.
as a matter of fact, a lot of people say
That's
that
why
they don't.
that's why people end up needing tutors. 'Cause
Correct.
they
They-
say
Yeah,
you
it's
have
like
to do
the-
it this way.
Yeah, like I have this workbook that I go through with my daughter, and it's like a bunch of different type of exercise and logic puzzles and activities. And at the end of like the activity, like most of them ask, "Hey, is there another way to do this? Can you think of like 3 other ways to possibly solve this situation?"
That's a good
Like,
idea.
I think that it's best to advocate that instead of saying, "Hey, you can only use this one single way." But yeah, it's good to have them thinking multiple ways,
Yeah.
regardless of whether it's efficient. But when they get to things where they have to, like if they learn coding in school, they're probably going to need to be taught about efficiency and stuff like that.
And that's,
But
but I mean, you need to know the concept of math to even know why it's efficient in the first place. Because like,
right,
if you're not even given a chance to even explore writing down all that, because I mean, even when you physically write down 2 + 2 + 2 + 2, you know what I mean? You'll go, well, that took my hand more resources. So gosh, it has to take the computer more resources to read all of that. Like,
right,
it just logically makes you think about it, because that's how just human beings, we connect things. And the more you get to play with things and you are allowed to play with things, that's why I like postmodernism. I won't ever throw postmodernism completely out, because play is a big portion of it. It's like,
It
you have
is.
to play to be able to create. So if, like I said, I understand that a lot of people are kind of, bashing on postmodernism, but play is one of the greatest things that you can probably integrate from postmodernism.
And that
yeah,
leads to
it's very
innovation, like we were
flexible.
talking about earlier.
Yeah, we gotta let people think in different ways. There's going to be some neurodivergent people that just will not tolerate certain things.
And that's the most important thing about having an agile mind, because the more agile you are, not only do you think of things differently, but you also intake information differently,
Mhm.
meaning you
Yeah.
can mold your mind to understand somebody else's way of thinking, so you can actually work that empathy muscle. Because if I understand the way I think and I accept the way that I think, I can also accept the way that you think, even though it's
Yeah.
different.
Exactly. Yeah, that's like one of the that was one of the best things I learned about mixed mental arts, because I had already been into learning a little bit, but it was through mixed mental arts that I learned that the way to learn something is to be interested in it. And I went the whole time I was growing up, when I was a kid, I hated school and I thought it was boring. So I also hated learning, because I associated it with school, and school was boring. But it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized that, I actually like learning about things if I can choose the things that I learn, and I can learn about them in the way that I want to learn about them. And then I can learn them well enough that I can explain them to others. And because I know that I don't necessarily learn the same way that everyone else does, it makes it easier for me to understand when other people are having trouble understanding how to learn things, which is why I can be a better tutor when I have students.
Yeah, I think like the main issue with Common Core was limiting teachers' ability to try out different things. Because I know my wife was kind of bashing on that too. And she's like, yeah, it's kind of, a lot of teachers are upset is because like the the lesson plans are becoming too authoritarian, the ones that they have to teach. So, like, I totally understand, like, the need for a teacher to have creative license in the classroom in order to, teach something that may not be fully understood by some. You're gonna have to change it up a bit and vary
Mhm.
up how you're gonna approach something, because not every
Yeah.
single group of kids is gonna be acceptive of that Common Core method. Like,
Yeah.
it's weird, but
And some teachers don't even actually teach too. It reminds me of when in my grade nine math class, that was the first class I ever failed, and half of the class failed because the teacher every day would just give us the questions for our homework assignment, and we'd have to figure out how to solve the questions ourselves.
that's not being a teacher. That's just
No.
getting a paycheck.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
but they made it so it's kind of that way when you just have a method and you go, this is the method, and then it's like, here are your workbooks, and just do the method. And then, if you're an actual teacher, you go, like we just talked about, if you're a good teacher, you know that everybody learns differently. You have to accommodate. That means you have to be agile with your teaching style. Meaning, if you have to accommodate, it's like, I know that this method will work for most of the class, but there's going to be a couple people that aren't going to get this. So since there's a couple people that aren't going to get this, if me being a salient and just considerate teacher, I'm going to make up different lesson plans based off of different learning styles that I see that are most common, and then I'll make even tweaks to that based off of the kid that's in the classroom. That takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of cognitive areas and everything like that. And people, there are good teachers out there that would be willing to do that if A, the money was right, and B, if they didn't have their hands tied. So this is where it's kind of weird being a teacher now, because I get where teachers are actually, their hands are tied, because now we've entered this space where everybody blames their scholastic achievement on the teacher, like we just did with that teacher that didn't teach. But then they also have their hands tied, so they can't fully teach even if they wanted to teach.
Yeah, like the education system itself and the way the teachers are taught to teach it is fucked up too. Yeah, and then like right now, also obviously it's even way more difficult for everyone with all the COVID stuff that's happening. Like my mom has a few friends who are teachers in elementary school, and the schools have opened and then closed down and then opened back up probably a dozen times at least throughout this whole 2 years or so, or however long it's been. It's really crazy to have to deal with that shit.
Yeah, and adapting to a whole different environment. Like, even us talking digitally, it's a different impact than it would be if we were in the same room. If we were in the same room, we'd probably have more rapport. We'd probably be louder. We'd probably have, just a different kind of energy than we do now. Us being in different rooms and everything like that, that changes up everything. Because the thing about it is you could be in a lively room than I'm in. I could be in like a more mellow room, and that will change the environment of the conversation just there. So trying to teach under those circumstances has to be phenomenally hard.
Yeah, for sure. And
but
then
I'm
you've
not
got
gonna
all
lie,
the.
man.
Go ahead.
Oh, I said, but I'm not gonna lie, man. The thing about the education system that's the most tragic now is just the fact that now that people have been able to see what's going on with the classrooms, with everything being virtual with COVID and everything, is the fact that people don't like what's being taught, and a lot of people are afraid of the indoctrination that's happening, or what they feel is
and the way that the teaching is happening too, like especially the younger the kids are, you can't expect kids to sit in front of a computer 8 hours a day to get their education. And like, I didn't even want to do a little bit of that, which is why, like, a few years ago during the start of COVID, I stopped taking the classes that I was taking at my local little college because they started doing everything online. And I'm just like, I don't want to. If I'm going to pay for classes, I want to pay to actually go to a building and get into debates with the professors and talk with my fellow students and stuff like that. If I'm going to just talk about philosophy online, I can do that for free any day, and I can read books and I can talk to people who love philosophy and study it, and I can do all that for free.
Yeah, which is why I think school is kind of obsolete now, but that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, our schools are still in person over here, so
Yeah.
just got to mask it up. That's the only thing.
Okay.
But my wife, she's in another county. Her schools went virtual a week before Christmas, and then stopped going virtual on January the 18th.
Oh, okay.
But now they're issuing every student gets a COVID test, free COVID test gets administered to their family, and they get free N95 masks.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
I mean, that's pretty dope. Those things look like badass, especially when you're like rioting. But
This looks like a regular old, like a dust mask kind of.
oh, well, still, it's a great rioting look. But I'm not.
Well,
gonna lie, man.
it's not a. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about, like a respirator. Like that's the
yeah.
one I use to paint my car. No, they're not giving those to the kids.
You wore that a little bit when you would go out at first, right? During COVID, remember?
Yeah, when I first started and everything wasn't known about what was going on, I was rocking basically a gas mask with goggles on. I was like, I ain't getting this shit. I'll have to go grocery shopping. Let me go and put my gear on. It was like my face. But the funny thing about my mask is like it doesn't filter what's coming out of it, just what's coming in. So if I had COVID, everybody around me was getting it.
Okay.
Because it has a one-way. It's like it has a breather valve, so whatever air comes out of the valve unfiltered. But whatever comes in goes through like these huge filters on the side of the mask.
I didn't have to get tested for the whole pandemic until recently. We got tested because we were going to a Christmas party of our family friends, and my friend who lives with them got cancer like 2 years ago and survived from it. So he's better now, but he's super cautious about COVID because of it. So we got tested and I hadn't gotten it.
Yeah, I haven't taken the test yet this year. I haven't gotten it either. I'm guessing eventually I'm gonna get it. I just hope the version I get is like the super weak sauce form that doesn't eventually be developed. It seems like the COVID is getting weaker and weaker with each iteration.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
So hopefully I get the week. It's probably going to be like the yearly flu where you got to get your COVID shot and your flu shot.
I never get my flu shot.
Yeah, I didn't really get my flu shot either. Like I never really got the flu.
Yeah.
But I think I got it once, like at the beginning of the pandemic. But we knew for sure it was like the flu and not COVID because we got it like in November, and the pandemic wasn't really a thing until January of that year.
Right. All right. Well, we've been talking for 3 hours now, and we stopped talking about the book a while ago. So before we end it here, I want to get from you guys, what was your favorite part of the book, and what did you think about the ending? I liked the way what they did with the ending, and it makes me excited to read the third book. And I'm not sure what my favorite part was. Maybe when Roland was first possessing Eddie, and then when he got into that shootout with the drug dealer when he was in his body and that kind of thing. I'm not sure. But what about you, Parker?
I thought the camaraderie that was built between Roland and Eddie when they were both going through their sicknesses, Eddie with his withdrawals and Roland with, him losing his fingers and having the infection and everything, and, just trying to survive. I've been in situations where you're uncomfortable with one another, and knowing that it was deadly uncomfortable is the fact that both of them were really sick, and Eddie even had like some murderous thoughts, and that he overcame that to essentially become a brother to Roland. That meant a lot to me. Detta and Odetta getting together to become, just one being that was an integral part to me, and just having Jake and just kind of feeling this level of love, because I mean, Roland went through a lot to save Jake. So the fact that he went through that much to save that kid and almost save his own innocence in the splitting that happened, I thought that was also quite significant. So, I mean, I don't even consider the end of the book to be the end of the book because it's not the end of the series. So, I mean, as far as I think about it, it just feels unfinished because it is.
Well, that's one of the things that I like about the ending, about the whole integration of Odetta and Detta into one personality. That's one of the reasons that I like the ending. So what about you, Dusty?
My favorite part was probably anytime Roland interacted with our world. But my absolute favorite part was when he was concocting his own plan to trick our modern gunslingers and suspecting the gun shop owner of stealing his wallet.
Oh yeah, that was interesting. Yeah.
I was like, man, he's really really crafted a plan. And we didn't even really know what the plan was until it actually got played out.
Right.
I was like, oh, this guy's crafty as hell. But he's doing all of this so he can get some bullets and some penicillin. But yeah, I did like the development of the relationships. Like, it caught me way off guard when he first went into Eddie. It's like, what is this book doing?
Yeah, I know, right?
It's like, what's going on with this book?
Count on Stephen King to do possession in a really interesting and original way, right?
Yeah, it started off as like, yes, I could see through the eyes of this individual, and then we're looking at this individual, and it's a guy from our world. Like, okay, let's see what this book is all about. Because I was expecting kind of more of the same of the last book, but man, this was totally different.
Yeah, yeah.
And I actually do like this better than the first book. Because the first book was really hard for me to really grasp and dial in on what was going on. Like, I kind of know what was going on, but man, I had to re-listen to parts like so many times. I was like, what's going on here? So this book though, it felt like Stephen King was more invested than the first book. Like, he really cared about what he was doing here and what type of story he was trying to tell here. And I really enjoyed that we actually had some character, like some real character development here. And
Yeah.
I'm really interested to see what's going to happen in the next few books.
Yeah, me too. All right. Well, yeah, I guess I'll end it here since we've been talking for a while. And yeah, so thanks to everyone for watching. We enjoyed it as always, and as well as our thoughts on all sorts of other topics as well as usual. And check out for our next book club chat, do you guys want to talk about the third Dune book? I believe that's God Emperor of Dune. I think that's what it is.
God Emperor's 4.
Is that 4? Well, whatever.
It's Children of Doom is the
Children of Doom?
Yeah, is the third one.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, you guys want to talk about that one next time?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm down. I'm down.
Cool.
I think that's the
All
one
right.
that I don't remember that much.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is for me too. So, and it just as happened with especially the second book for I think both you and I, Dusty. It seemed like it was way better upon the second read. So hopefully that'll happen with the third one too. And I know that's the one that you haven't read yet, right, Parker? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I haven't finished any of that. So I mean, every time we get one of those books, I'm like where you guys are with the Gunslinger series. So that
Cool.
would be my first rodeo.
Yeah, it's interesting that that's working out that way. Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll talk about that for our book club chat group next time. And I think next week we'll probably do the podcast that we're gonna do with our movie chat crew about the long 4-hour long Snyder cut of Justice League. So gonna nerd out about that movie, so that'll be fun. And I'm also working on my video that will be on Rule 3 of Jordan Peterson's newest book, Beyond Order. So look for that too. And yeah, like I always say, thanks to everyone for subscribing. Subscribe if you haven't. Click that like button on the video. Click the bell to be notified when I come out with more videos. And check out my Patreon page. Even $1 a month is greatly appreciated, and that's in the description of the video as always. And like I always say, I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all, and groove is in the heart. And read the Dark Tower series and the Dune series. They're very awesome. And anything else you guys want to say before we end it there?
Yeah. If you guys want to be mediocrely entertained, then check out my Instagram at the _ Afro It's a fun, wonderful time, and I mean, I hope
is.
that it makes you kind of sort of laugh every now and then, but it's all good.
Yeah, a lot of your Instagram stories make me laugh. Yeah. What about you,
All
Dusty?
right. I think tomorrow we're gonna wrap up the Castlevania series, right?
Yeah, we're talking about season 4 on your channel, right? On Woke Centrist,
Yeah.
so check that out too.
So I will have to actually. I thought I had finished it, but I got to finish the last episode.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we're gonna talk about that on my channel tomorrow. And if you're not talking to Tristram next week, we could probably do go back to some Wheel of Time.
Yeah, you want to start talking about Winter's Heart?
Yeah, we could start on that. That'll be fun to dive back into the books.
Cool. Yeah, and then we can talk about that next Arcanum Unbounded story with him after that. But that'll be like 3 or so weeks from now. Well, no, 2 or 3 weeks from now, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll
Cool,
figure
man.
it out. Yeah.
Yeah. Our schedules are usually pretty tentative.
Yep. All right.
All right.
Well, thanks, man. And thanks both you guys. And thanks everyone for watching. Fun as always. And adios until next time, everyone. Have a good night.
All right. You too, man.